I'm probably a little more cavalier with my line moves. Like I just like to cause chaos on the screen. Like that's the goal every Monday morning when I can, to cause utter chaos. I want everyone to be like, "What the is going on at Circa?"
Come on, let's go! You think I'm gonna come on here and put one of the Aussies in the elite tier?
I'd vote for Rob of 25,000. I wouldn't vouch for you.
I can basically just cheat and get the same bets that they're getting. And
it's weird because you can also pay your bills at the same place where you bet.
I mean, you're a short guy.
What?
This guy talks a lot of trash. He's talked a lot of trash about me, Rob, a lot of people in the community, but he's refusing to show his face.
Touting yourself as a pretty good NFL gambler. I thought you were an idiot.
Say testing, I'm a cuck. 1, 2, 3, 4.
The Aussies, going head to head with the Aussies. That's what I drew for, and I said, get him, Kirk.
And they call me a mean-spirited name. I don't hang out with them.
The Toronto Maple Leafs at 14-1 are staring me dead in the face.
I'm already getting, a lot of early. This could be the best Circles Off episode that's ever been done.
Welcome to Circles Off, episode number 184. Right here, part of the Hammer Betting Network and presented by Pinnacle Sportsbook. I'm Rob Pizzola, back in the saddle. Johnny
Robbie Marbles.
Robbie Marbles.
Nice to be back.
Nobody's called me that in a long time.
I know, because you haven't won any circa millions.
The Philly Godfather crew used to call me Robbie Marbles back in the day.
We got an amazing guest.
This episode I've been looking forward to for a while. Finally have been able to make the recording time work, which is great. Just ran into, I mean, we don't, I don't know why we're speaking in secrecy. It's going to be on the, it's the title of the episode. Everything is going to be,
you got to wait to see who it is.
Yeah, you gotta wait, tune in to see who it is. But no, excellent bookmaker, top class, great human being as well. So we're going to dive into a bunch of key concepts on today's show. But before we do, speaking of top class bookmakers, that's what Pinnacle Sportsbook is. Available to bettors across Canada. Find out what pro bettors have known for decades. Pinnacle is where the best bettors play. I've personally been playing at Pinnacle for a long time. They'll always be one of my sportsbooks of choice because it's a great product. They have great limits, great customer service, easy to get money in and out. Anything you could ask for in a sportsbook, I think they're very fair. So make sure you check them out. Head over to pinnacle.com/hammer. To do so, must be 19 plus. Not available in the U.S. And as always, please play responsibly.
Here we go.
Today's guest is one of the most respected names in the sports betting industry, known for his leadership in shaping the modern sportsbook landscape. As the former sportsbook director at Circa Las Vegas, he played a pivotal role in building one of the most bettor-friendly sportsbooks in the world, setting industry standards for transparency, for fair odds, and high-limit wagering. He's now the Chief Risk Officer for Mojo. You can follow him on Twitter at MMPact. Matt Metcalf joins us on Circles Off. Matt, how are things?
Good. How are you guys doing?
Doing great. I've wanted to have you on for a while. Respect you greatly for what you've accomplished in the space and for all the true sharps out there. There's a conversation that circulated a while back about who would you put on your Mount Rushmore of sports betting? And candidly, I would put you in there, Matt. So this is a pleasure to talk to you today on Circles Off, because I think you've done so much for the space. But there's a lot of people out there who'll be watching this for the first time. They don't know anything about you. So if you could just quickly start here with your journey into the sports betting world and what first drew you to this industry.
Yeah, first off, I want to just thank you for that introduction. It's probably more than kind. Truth be told, I was honestly nervous about coming on this podcast just because I respect you guys so much, and I think you're kind of like the voice for what I consider to be like the right side of the sportsbook industry, just like people doing things the right way. So again, thank you for having me on. What drew me into the sports betting industry probably starts when I was a kid. I was exposed at a pretty early age to gambling, like probably everybody, a lot of people who listen to your podcast. I can remember the first time that I was exposed to kind of like betting, and it wasn't necessarily sports, but taking a field trip to Thomas Edison's home in Fort Myers, Florida. I think it was like his winter home where he did like his like workshop where he did all stuff. And there was a kid in the back of the bus who was playing like some formation of like poker with dice. And so basically you had 5 dice and you would try to roll the best hand. You get 2 rolls. So if you rolled, 3 threes and a 4 and a 5. You'd hold the 3s and then roll the other 2 dice to try to break the best hand. I think everybody was kicking in like $1 per roll. And I was just like, what is going on back here? Like people are cheering, like everyone's excited. Like I worked my way to the back of the bus and I'm like, oh, this looks awesome. I had like, $7 on me or something. And I don't even remember like if I won or lost. It was like not even important to what like happened. I just remember thinking like, this is amazing. I can make money with like nothing but like my decision making in my brain. And granted, there wasn't a lot of skill involved in that. It was mostly luck. But yeah, so I kind of remember that was my first experience with betting. And then I was lucky enough to have a friend, it's probably at like 13 or so, whose mom like had a bookie. I have no idea. Like she was probably at the time like in her mid 40s, but she had a bookie. She was Cuban, and she had this Cuban because I'm South Florida. Like a lot of my friends are Hispanic. I don't know. That's not really important in the story, but anyway, we met this Hispanic like Cuban bookie guy, and eventually we were placing so many NFL bets through her that she like gave us his number, and we had like an account, and we would call up and say, hey, this is number like 34. Can you give us the rundown of the NFL lines? We'd get the NFL lines. If we lost, we would take our bikes up to the local mall and meet this guy in his Cadillac and pay him off. Yeah, we were just like, we were like true degenerates. I can remember we got into calling like Stu Feiner back in the day. And I mean, they would ask you on the phone back then, again, I don't know how this works now, but they would ask you like, how much money are you betting? Because they wanted to pin you to an amount. So they could basically say, okay, if you're betting 1,000 a game, then we need to have like $500 of every, pick we give you. And we were just like, okay, well, I guess we need to bet more to get the good picks. And we eventually, like, I don't even know how we were putting this on somebody's credit card, but anyway, yeah, that was a long story. We were all awful at betting. Beyond that, we used to bet on like Super Mario Kart. We would do things where like we play like the heads up matchups, I think, like the races, and like every second that you would beat somebody by was like worth some amount of pre-negotiated money. We like had our own craps games. Like, I don't know. We just like, we all had like running bets to each other at all times. There's a group of my friends, like 7 of us. We had a sheet of paper and we just all be like, okay, Billy owes me $340. Rob owes me $110. So we'd all be just like transferring debts. Like if one of us lost, the other one would be like, okay, how much does Rob owe you? Okay, all right, take $50 off his debt and like, it was out of control. Like we needed an intervention. We didn't get one. Yeah, to answer your question, that's how I got into betting. And yeah,
that's the same. Seems like he's from our hometown.
It's the same story as me, man.
I still owe Rob on an active sheet. I don't know. Do we ever settle up, or you just keep gambling forever? No, we didn't settle up. I'm saying, do we ever settle up? Like,
no, I think it just goes on.
It just goes on until that's how it is.
The Mario Kart story is hilarious because me and my friends used to do the exact same thing. That's very clever that you guys did it by the amount of time that you won by. Because there's a very clear Mario Kart strategy, which is, stick behind in the back of the pack and stockpile great weapons and hoard them till the last lap, whether that's a lightning or a blue shell or whatever. So we had to implement a rule where we were playing each lap that you led would get you a percentage of the pot as well. So it incentivized you to go a little bit harder in the early laps and not stick back.
Otherwise, you just start the race and then everyone's just there.
Yeah, I mean,
it's not even.
Yeah, I mean, it's not. Anyways, that's a good idea by time 1, because that way
we were looking for all the alt markets we could find. We just wanted like all the like different ways to like have action flowing.
100%. Before we got to these actual alt markets, was there a pivot to a winning bettor before you got into bookmaking?
No, it's funny. Like, because I was so bad starting out, that's probably what led me to think about bookmaking. I remember like baseball was my sport growing up, and I kind of jettisoned that as I got older. But like, I would wake up every morning before school, grab my sports section, and just like be obsessed with like player stats. And I remember thinking, okay, I know so much about baseball. This is the sport that I can beat. And back in the day, we would bet from the newspaper lines, I think was the line he would quote, where it was like, I don't even know the correct way to like term this, but it would have like 2 numbers. It would have like, 7, it was all based on like a nickel type thing. It was like 7.5, and then you'd have 6.5. And so if you bet, $7.50, you'd win $5 on the favorite. If you bet $5 on the dog, you'd win like $6.50. And we'd go through the paper and see the line. I think I at one point lost like 13 straight baseball bets. And I was just like, this is crazy. Like, if I know something about baseball, and again, not like I knew a ton, but I felt like I knew something, and I'm this bad at this, like what must like average people who are just like making random bets be doing? So I think at that point, my one friend and I who had the bookie connection, all of our friends were into betting by that point. We're like, hey, what about, and we were calling in their bets for them. So we're like, what about if we just hold their bets? What about if we just take their bets and don't call them in? And at first we were like, that seems kind of scary. What if they win? But we're like, hey, they never win. So let's just keep them and let's not tell them, because, if we tell them that, they're not going to pay us. So at the time we thought there was, there's nothing wrong with that. We're just kind of cutting out the middleman. We did that. And I think that kind of opened my eyes to like the potential of bookmaking and like why that might be a career I could be interested in down the line.
When did you actually start to pursue that?
So I read an article, like we did this in school as much as we could. Like if we knew kids, this is in high school, if we knew kids wanted to bet, we'd just be like, hey, we can take that bet if you're looking to take that. And it was kind of like one-off bets. We would take a bet here and there. But I read an article, and I think it was in like 93 or 94, and it came out around the time of March Madness. And it was a 3-part series by a guy named Tim Layden, who was a reporter for Sports Illustrated. And it was like, it talked about campus gambling. And it was basically saying how bad this was, how, sports betting is preying on like the youth of our country. But the thing that they did in this article was they laid out like a step-for-step, like how-to bookmaking. And basically just like anyone who didn't really understand how it works, they just laid it all out so well in the article. And gave you so much information that I was like, this just sounds incredible. Like, this sounds like something that I would love to do. And like, oh, now I understand, about how to run parlay cards. And now I understand all these other things. And it kind of just gave me this like primer on bookmaking, to the point where once I read that, and I probably was like 16 at the time or 15, I was just like, this is all I want to do. I just like, this is like, I feel like this is my calling in life. Like, I want to figure out how to get to a point where I can do this. At the same time, I didn't really want to be like somebody like evading the law. So I was just like, is there a way I can do this and not get in trouble? Like, can I, and then eventually Vegas became the destination, kind of do that on the up and up, which is where I went, after school.
Okay, so you get to Vegas. I like to tell the story of Dink being like a big mentor to me. Johnny doesn't tell the story of me being a big mentor to him in the early going, where he used to meet me at the local pubs.
I mentioned it many times.
Where he used to meet me at the local pub. Who was the mentor for you? Like when you first got involved in the bookmaking industry, who were the people that you looked up to and showed you the ropes?
So I paid a lot of attention when I was in college to a sports book called the Imperial Palace. And the reason I paid attention to them is they were known as kind of like the epicenter for prop betting back in the 90s. And they would do just this crazy big menu of Super Bowl props, and they would actually put it online. So if you went to AOL and you typed in under the keyword odds, it would kick you to the Imperial Palace like prop menu at some point if you clicked on the Super Bowl tab. And I would just go through those bets every year and be like amazed, like how are these guys able to make numbers on all these different things? Like, this is incredible. Like, I probably even, booked my friend's action according to these bets when I was younger, and just like printed out the sheet and like, hey guys, if you want to bet anything, bet this. So when I graduated school, I basically wrote 3 letters, and I apologize if I've ever told this story before and somebody has heard it, but I wrote one to Roxy Roxborough at Las Vegas Sports Consultants. I wrote one to a guy named Gio Lupo, who was the sportsbook director of the Stardust at the time. And I wrote one to Jay Cornegay, who was the sportsbook director at the Imperial Palace. Roxy had already left LVSC, which I didn't know. He had sold it, and a different guy owned it, wrote me back and said, hey, we don't hire people unless they have worked in a book. Never heard back from Stardust, but Jay Cornegay was nice enough to write me back and basically say, hey, if you're looking for a job, once you graduate, come out to Vegas and look me up and we'll see what we can do. So when I graduated college, I threw myself in the car, drove to Vegas. Jay hired me. When I got there and eventually started as a ticket writer, I realized quickly that the guy that I was looking up to from afar that I didn't know was this guy named Ed Salmons, who was the head odds maker at the Imperial Palace, who went on to be probably like one of my biggest mentors in the business. So that was like one of the main people I looked up to right off the bat, as well as a guy named Nick Bogdanovich, who was kind of known as like just like the action bookie. Guy started out downtown in Binions, had worked at the Strat for Carl Icahn, taking huge bets, had worked at Mandalay Bay, had actually got fired or let go from Mandalay Bay when Charles Barkley like welched on a $500,000 bet on the 02 Super Bowl with him. And then this guy named Richie Baccelleri, who had run like Caesars and Palms. Those were like the 3 guys who I think I really just like, idolized for a couple of different reasons. Like Richie was the professor to me of like bookmaking. Nick was kind of like just like the big guy. Like nobody's got a bet that Nick won't take. And then Ed was just like, to this day, the best odds maker I've ever met.
Love that story.
What's the Charles Barkley story?
Yeah, we
So if you look it up, you'll see it. But basically, Barkley was a credit player at Mandalay at the time. He went down to the book the morning of the Super Bowl. And this is, I think, like Patriots Rams. So I don't know the exact bet he made, but I know he bet the Patriots. I'm assuming he took the points because I think the payout would have been on the money. If you bet the money line, it would have been a lot more. And I think that he only ended up winning like $700,000. He bet $500,000 or like $550,000 on the Patriots. And Nick, I don't think, or the people working for Nick never grabbed the marker or never had Charles sign anything. So he had basically made the bet on his word. And then as the day went on, nobody ever kind of like settled the marker or settled the bet. And nobody knows whether Barkley was kind of just avoiding it or whether he actually forgot. But anyway, the bet won. They never found Barkley before. He walked up to the window and cashed the ticket and was like, pay me, when he had gotten the ticket in his hand. But technically he kind of free rolled them to, if the bet was going to lose, like the thought was like, he probably wasn't going to pay this bet if it lost. So that's the Barkley story. And I think Nick bore the brunt of that like victory by Charles. And I think ended up having to move on from Mandalay.
So he never welched on the bet.
I'm sure if anyone asked Charles, the response would be like, of course I was going to pay it if I lost. But he did free roll himself, basically.
He free rolled them. I guess welch is the wrong word. And I'm not privy to all the details, but just from reading a lot about it and trying to like pry it out of Nick, because Nick's not a guy who's going to throw anybody on the bus, whether there was that situation or not. Like, I get the sense that the thought was that it was understood that if that bet did not win, it probably was not going to be paid. So.
Interesting. It happens, I guess, even in the regulated space in Vegas.
Yeah.
So we had a bunch of questions for you in regards to, which I think we'll get to, in regards to bookmaking, stuff like that. But you are one of the, as Rob mentioned, like kind of like a Mount Rushmore style guy in your approach and philosophy to bookmaking. So my question is, how does that differ from the standard approach?
When I came up, I don't think I differ at all from like the offshore guys. Like the books that I idolized kind of coming up, the Pinnacle from like when I got to Vegas from 2004 to 2010, like that's kind of like interacting with Pinnacle. That was where I got kind of most of my inspiration for how a book should be run. Obviously following books like Chris, books like Grande. These were books that I just like, I liked the way they moved lines. I liked the way they took action. They didn't run from anybody. Like there's a big kind of like, to me, it's kind of like the spirit of the game. Like I think Rufus Peabody like voiced this like label on it, and it resonated with me. It's just like there's obviously a way you can do things optimally for profits, but there's also like, to me, just this inherent like, I want to be the best at my occupation. I want to take on everyone I can, and like this is how the game. I run a fair book because like I wouldn't do this job if I didn't run it fair. It's not fun for me unless I'm playing the game the right way. Like cheating or like cutting people off, like it wouldn't be fun to me. I would never have the opportunity to like rise to what I would consider like to be elite if I was just be like, if I was Jordan, but I was like, oh, I want to play against like the Knicks. They're a little tough. I want to play against the Suns. They kind of like, they're pretty good. They might beat me. Like my only way to like rise to that level is to take on the best every day. Plus, I think there's the added bonus of like, when you see the sharpest bets, it's a lot easier to adjust your line accordingly, to feel like you have the max amount of information when you're taking the bets yourselves, rather than like trying to look at the screen and be like, oh, Chris just went to 2.5 to 3. I wonder why they did that. Maybe they did that because they took it back from here. Like, I don't want to get in like this mode of like speculation. I'd rather be very upfront, pay for the information, and have the best line I can. So I feel comfortable when the guy walks to the window, 10 minutes of the game and wants $1 million on the side, be like, yeah, I'm comfortable where my line is. I can take that bet.
So do you have a history, obviously, of not cutting anybody off at your time at Circa? Do you think cutting people off is like cheating, so to speak?
It's not cheating. Game? It's just like, I'm accepting of other books' models. I just think that they're not. I think they think they're maximizing profits and revenue and stuff when I don't think they are. I think like Circa's been an example of that. Like we've held pretty close. So like right now, I think we're above 3% lifetime, holding against 90% wise guys. Like we can hold 3% against the sharpest of the sharp and get their information and utilize it to feel more comfortable about being in good positions from all the action we see. So my thought is like, it doesn't make sense to cut this segment of the population off that A is like helping you deal a better line and feel more comfortable, taking on risk. But B is just like you're still earning off them. You're still making money off them. So yeah, I don't understand the other model, I guess. And again, like I'm not necessarily just trying to write every bet I can to the sky's no limit, but handle, there's good. Jay Cornier used to always tell me there's good handle and bad handle. And I agree to some point, but at the same time, like the goal of bookmaking to me should be to get the limits as high as you're able to write within the smallest window possible. So if you can write a baseball game at, minus 30 and plus 20, plus 25, and you're writing bets that you wouldn't write if you weren't that tight of the split, like you're not really like doing your job if you're not maximizing like the amount of like handle you're getting through at good positions for the book. So that's kind of my whole philosophy. Write as much as you can.
So I used to believe kind of what you're saying right now. And then over the past, I'd say 1 to 2 years, I kind of had a little shift in mentality. When it comes to the overall business standpoint of things, like which is, hey, let's say you're FanDuel versus Circa versus Pinnacle, you need to make the most amount of money possible for that business. Do you think that you could ever make as much, given that when you're writing kind of like the Circa model, the Pinnacle model, it doesn't really enable you to offer all these different game types and game modes, I guess we'll call them, that like Circa doesn't offer they definitely don't offer any same game parlays, but they certainly aren't even close to offering the level at which FanDuel does, where you can like price pretty much anything, bam, 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 down the road, 1,000 million combinations. Do you think that then prohibits a sportsbook from really taking off and growing mainstream?
Yeah, I agree with you. My whole thing is like, I don't want to punish the customer for my lack of like technical infrastructure or my ability to kind of write bets, which is why at Circa, like you said, we're limited to kind of like the markets that we feel good about, that we can control. But with these bigger books, I do agree with you. If they were to kind of take on the Circa model or the Pinnacle model and write all these bets, they probably wouldn't be able to book the size of the menu they book, and they probably would be sacrificing a lot of the recreational play, obviously, that they have. A lot of my goals moving forward center around creating tech that will allow for some version of automated price discovery, to allow the Circa model to be applied to more markets and gradually get it to the point where, we can apply what I perceive to be fair limits towards all these different markets. Because it comes down to, you should have to give a fair bet to a wise guy to get their information. I don't think it's sustainable or really fair. And I know people can make fun of me for saying it's not fair, but to pay somebody, pennies on the dollar to see what Rob's hockey opinion is on tonight's game, at some point it's not worth it for him to share that information. And so I think the books, if they're going to utilize our information as sharps, they owe it to the players to pay them fairly. And I don't think the players are unreasonable when it comes to that. They're not looking to get $1 million in every game, but if they have, if they're betting, money lines, full side hockey games, like they should think like, hey, at the worst, I'm going to get down a dime from your book based on how big you are, or 5 dimes based on how big you are. So I think, I don't know, I consider myself a pretty good judge of like what's appropriate limits. And I think we execute that well at Circa. But no, to get back with what you said initially, John, you're right. It would be hard for the current state for those books to kind of like maintain the revenue they're making with the limited menu. So I don't disagree.
What markets do you think right now can handle the Circa model? So obviously all the major markets, straight bets, sides, total, money line for sure, probably first half, second half, stuff like that, maybe even quarters, maybe even futures. When it comes down to like props and derivatives, what markets are closest to being able to handle that?
I missed the first half of your question because my computer cut out. But you were saying like what markets are closest to kind of being liquid?
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah, I think that there's an opportunity for, NBA, NFL, like main type player markets, like quarterback prop markets, NBA, like star player markets, like points totals and stuff like that. I think those markets could be price discovered better and more aggressively, to the point where like, the bigger books could be booking five dimes, at post on, LeBron James points or something like that. It's a bad example probably, but yeah, I think that there's a lot of room in there, but the books have to want to do that, and they have to see the incentive. And I don't know if the bigger books like really see that incentive. I can tell you, when we were booking Super Bowl props at Circa for the past few years, we would get up to, I think, 10 dimes on a big part of the menu. And the two-way action we would see for 10 dimes a pop on these props was incredible. And in very tight windows where we're earning on every bet, I was just blown away. And I think the appetite by players to like place more money on these player props betting is growing by the day. So I just hope that, the industry doesn't kind of push this down the path of like, these deserve to only be $100, $200 bets. I think there are some markets within those that obviously shouldn't be, sky high limits, but I think there are some that, as you price discover on game day and feel good about the information you have at your availability, that you could push the limit higher and right action. So.
I want to dig into price discovery really quickly here, just because this is one of the challenges of actually doing Circles Off. Is we mostly catered for a long time to a pure sharp audience, but a lot of our growth has come from more recreationals and casuals who are learning the space. And I don't think that there's really a general knowledge out there from 98 to 99% of people in the betting space as to what price discovery really is. I listen to a lot of content. I watch other people talk about content. I see opening lines go out on Sunday in NFL. I hear commentary around, well, the sportsbook put it here because they're trying to trap us into betting this and things of that nature. Can you walk us through just a little bit of what price discovery means?
Yeah, I think that price discovery is kind of operating in a totally reactive way to the market and the bets you're seeing. I'm probably as far leaning towards just pure price discovery as any bookmaker could be. There are times when I've thought about just hanging every game at pick and 45 for an NFL game just to take the process as far as I can. I think price discovery is really the art of bookmaking and understanding who is the player who's betting with me, what is their motivations in placing this bet, and then how do I respond accordingly. A good example, I guess, of price discovery is when Circa opens the first college football line. We used to open at 11. I think we open it earlier now, Pacific time, on Sundays. We're trying to put up a good number, but at the same time, we realize that the amount of work it would require to put up a really good number on every game, it's kind of just not worth it. So we all kind of do our homework, read up on injuries as much as we can, tweak our ratings and come up with a consensus number. But we're not really attached to that number that much. We're kind of just this is a good jumping off point. So to give you an example, there'll be certain games where I have a thought, I might think Coastal Carolina's quarterback is questionable. I saw him get hurt. I think the injury is pretty bad. I think he's not going to play. I made the game 7 with him playing. Without him, maybe I have the other side 1. I could put up the midpoint of that number and just stick up Coastal Carolina 3, but sometimes I'll take an even more aggressive line just to kind of figure out information, because usually what I find, public is thinking similarly, or I shouldn't say public, the sharps are usually thinking similar to how we are. So A lot of times I'll press it to one side just to kind of understand what they think the limit on the game is. So in short, price discovery is trying to extract as much information from the market as you can in as few a moves as possible. So if I went to 3 and I took no bets on that game, Coastal 3, I haven't learned anything. So I might say, okay, I opened at 3, nobody's doing anything. Let me go to Coastal 1, if they think that's too low. So I go down to 1, they lay 1. I go, okay, they're laying 1. I'm going to go back to 4 because they think he's going to play. So I passed up my opener, but I'm at that point, the limits are low. We're probably taking on the opener 3K to 5K, and I intend to take 50K on this game come Friday. So I'm not paying a ton for the information relative to what it's going to cost later in the week. And that's what I found personally is the key to price discovery, and why a lot of books don't do it is because for it to make sense, you have to take a big enough limit down the road that where the information you paid for on Monday is not the same cost of the information on Saturday. So I always kind of use a 10-to-1 ratio. I'd be willing to pay you 5K for information on Sunday, knowing that I'm going to take 50K. But I think it could get out of whack if I was going to take 5K on the opener and only take 10K on come the weekend. The information wouldn't be worth it. So at Circa, we move very aggressively. We use kind of our information and try to decipher okay, why is this guy betting this? Is he betting it because it's a middle to this book? Is he betting it because he thinks the injury is worse than we thought. But yeah, you're just probing. It's a lot of like probing and trying to understand like, where the number should be, what the market thinks. Because in reality, it doesn't really matter like what the number should be. It more matters like what the market thinks the number kind of should be, if that makes sense.
Yep, totally.
Question for you all, just because we kind of got into the injury stuff here. Little off topic. Are you tracking like what profiles might have information on specific things? So for example, like I know multiple people who, maybe they have information on Coastal Carolina because like they have a couple buddies there or whatever. And then they're constantly nailing every Coastal Carolina injury in and out. Are you then being like, oh, this guy actually got the last 2 Coastal QB injuries he had one from last year and he got the one from this year. So he keeps betting Coastal here. The guy's probably in.
I'm making a mental note of anything that I can. We don't have the systems available to us at the books that I've worked at in Las Vegas to really like do the actual like reporting and computerized tracking of stuff like that. But a lot of that is what I'm working on right now with the company I'm with, Mojo. I think that the books will continue to kind of like beef up their counter intel units, and stuff like that is going to be more common. But yeah, as bookmakers at Circa, and I consider our team to be, one of the best in the world. We're paying attention to everything we can. We know the guys who are going to bet the NBA injuries and have the best info. We know the guys who chase the NBA injuries and aren't the first. Anything that's defining about you as a bettor, we're trying to either make a note somewhere physically, or just mentally note stuff. So yeah, like all of that is valuable. Everything is information. There's not one thing that you could like. I could look at bets all day and try to decipher them. And it's the seeing of multiple bets, and the more bets we see, that's going to allow me to kind of put a read on somebody. Like, oh yeah, whenever this guy bets, we know he's like the nuts for some bell injuries. So like, make sure you move aggressive.
Understood. I have one more random question as well. I was always interested in like the actual bet sizing, total handle between certain sports and games. So would you be able to potentially map us out like a little chart here? So, like for example, NFL. Standard 1 p.m. game, or I guess different 10 a.m. for you guys in Vegas, but standard first slate game versus a standard NBA game. Like, what's the difference in handle?
We're a bad example, I think, for NBA, and maybe we're not, but we just don't write a lot of casual recreational NBA money. I was talking about this with somebody last week. It's almost like sad because when I grew up in the 90s, NBA to me was like the best betting sport. Like you knew the players, like you associated them so much with the teams. Just like, I always think a good betting sport is created when the public just has like inherent like opinions. When they can look at a spread and just, they know the teams so well, they know the players, they can just form an opinion out of thin air. When you have sports like NBA where some of the older guys have maybe lost touch with who all the players are, the players move around a lot, they're sitting all the time for, injuries or for rest, it just waters down the product in a way where the general public does not want to interact with it because there's so much uncertainty on their side of the thing. Uncertainty is positive for professional bettors. We feast on uncertainty, but like casual bettors, they stay away from uncertainty like it's just like the worst thing in the world. They want no part of uncertainty. They want to look at the game where they know that Oregon is the number 1 team in the country and they're playing Penn State and James Franklin is a loser. Give me Oregon all day. That's an easy bet. So to answer your question, like NFL probably like dwarfs NBA. I mean, we're taking, I think our limits are sometimes as low as like 3K or 5K on an NBA side and up to 200K on an NFL side. So that tells the story. The limits are telling you where the action is. So use that ratio to determine how much we're seeing.
No, fair enough. It's funny you say that with the uncertainty because it's true. Anytime, like a lot of my friends will say, I'll just catch them saying like, oh, well, Lamar Jackson's questionable, so there's too many injuries up in the air. So like, I'm not betting that game.
Yeah.
And for the guys I know on the more professional side are saying, Lamar Jackson's questionable. Like this is actually the game you want to be attacking.
Yeah, I mean, listen, my biggest bets of the year come based off of like the Brock Purdy situation a couple weeks ago was a big one for me where he's not throwing in practice. I'm like, that's a quarterback with a throwing injury on the injury report that's not throwing in practice. I want to bet against him now. Like it's priced as he's 100% in the market. Whereas I tell that to my friends and they're like, oh, like, why don't you just wait to see and this and that? And it's because I'm competing against other people. That concept is lost on people. They just want to bet 5 minutes before the game starts. They want to have all the information available to them, but they don't understand that they can't price that better than the other people in market. So it doesn't matter that they have all the information available to them. It's real challenging. You've touched on a lot of things, Matt, and I actually have so many questions for you, but there's one thing that I picked up on that I want to ask you about, which was essentially where an instance where you're proactively creating action just by moving the line. So you gave an example of like, yeah, we set a line, nothing's happening. Let's push it in one direction and see what happens when we go from there. Anyone who's watching the screen would think that that's moving based off of some sharp action. I mean, everyone would say that, well, sharps are betting this side of the game, when in reality, the instance you described has nothing to do with sharps betting the game. It's just you guys trying to figure out what the true line should be. That example that you brought up, is that a rare circumstance, or is that happening more often than people think is happening?
It's very common for me when I'm booking. Like I book college football, college basketball. I'm trying to think what else, like boxing. I'm very aggressive, and I don't know how common that is for other bookmakers. Not as common on our team, but I think I've trained some of them to kind of do some of it. A lot of it came from me watching, and again, this is weird because I don't play poker at all, but I watched poker as the boom came up like in the early 2000s, and I noticed that all the players who had the most success were just like very aggressive and like blindly aggressive. And I thought about how like when I used to book, I always felt like the players, like the sharp players, the bettors, were kind of just like pushing me around, and they were just like, bet, I gotta move. Like I didn't like playing defense like that. And so I was like, how can I turn this around where like I'm more like, I'm a bigger piece of like getting the information. I have more control over when I get the information, when I see it. So I was lucky enough, like when I first started out, Imperial Palace let me work a shift by myself. And I would go out on the line, and I had the computer where I could move the lines, but they didn't have the Don Best at the time. It was like the LVSC screen next to the computer where you move the lines. That was back in the office. But I was like, how can I like ramp myself up as fast as possible? So I would go out there, I'd book baseball in the morning to the sharps. And it was just, this is before the app. So it was just wise guy after wise guy coming to the window. And I would pretty much book it blind, where I would just like say, okay, this guy, I think he works for this syndicate. They're pretty good, but I know they only like win at this rate. Whereas like this guy's involved with, Billy Walters or something. Like I respect the hell out of his plays. Right. And I just move stuff and just be moving around all morning, just booking kind of to the action. I'd go in every 15 minutes or so, check the screen and see if there was any injuries that popped over or anything. But I think by like immersing myself in that process, I formed a lot of like different tactics than maybe other people. And I kind of kept that up as I got to Westgate, and I would do the same thing. And I liked the aggression. I liked having to read the market without a lot of context. And so it made me feel comfortable making these aggressive moves and really probing the market. I don't want to take credit for this approach, but I've sat next to like guys who've done it for a long time. Like I sat next to Nick Bogdanovich after I hired him, and he looked at me like I was like insane. Like he just like was like, what the hell are you doing? Like he had no concept of what I was doing. And I don't know, I'd have to ask him, but I think after working next to me for a year or so, he kind of understood more. But I'm of the belief that like you're not learning anything with a stagnant line on the screen. And what most bookmakers do is they accept that stagnant line is not moving. They're like, okay, that's the truth. That's the line. Because nobody's betting me, that's the line. But the thing they're not taking into account is the limit right now is $5,000. The sharpest players in the market have no incentive to interact with a 5K limit. Like it's not worth their time. They wouldn't get out of bed to like bet 5K. It's like laughable to them. It's like the equivalent of, like a random bettor betting 5 cents. So you have to incentivize these players to play. And if you're aggressive and you move around enough and you show them a number that they think might not ever show, again, they'll interact with it. And I know how to interpret, that bet to where I was in relation to the market and what to do with that information. And I can utilize it in a way that makes sense. I think that a lot of that happening at Circa Sports. We move a lot on air. The best bookmakers in the world, they're constantly trying to position themselves in a way that makes sense, whether it's to the market or for their own kind of opinion or the action they've seen. So it's a big part. I would say more of my moves are on air than they are in response to bets by far. So
really,
I don't know if that blows anybody's minds or anything, but yeah.
Are you watching just like a regular odd screen all day when you're moving, or you have your own internal tech?
So the great thing about, we're watching an odd screen, but I was gonna say the great part about working in a book like Circa is I tell my guys, like, you don't have to watch the odds screen necessarily. Like, you're seeing most of the bets. Like, we could get into a discussion about maybe some of those bets are head fakes, maybe they're not real, but in the end, and I give credit to a guy that I work with named Glenn Herzog, who's a just world-class bookmaker. He would always just be like, you know, when in doubt, book to the money you're seeing. Like, to try to sit there and to speculate on what's real, what's not, it's kind of a fool's errand sometimes. So, like, when in doubt, book to the money you see. I think the worst habit in the world that young bookmakers have is they take the bet, they look at the screen, they go back, they move the number. Like, if it was up to me, and I didn't do this at Circa, but I was tempted to many times, I would shut their odds screen off and I would say, until you're able to take that bet, move the number, then look at the odds screen, then come back and maybe make a move in reaction to that, like, you shouldn't be booking. Because, like, if everybody is doing it the wrong way, they're all looking and saying, like, okay, I wrote -3, the market's painted 3, okay, I'm going to leave it at 3. Like, the bettors understand the game theory behind this. They're making bets that you would be tempted not to move. Like, I can remember back in the day, like, you know, Billy would come in and play stuff at night, not Billy personally, but his guys would come in and play stuff at night, knowing that the overnight bookmakers were weak and they would be likely to leave a game that was in line. So if they laid 3 at the Westgate at midnight and the whole world was painted 3, the overnight guy would probably just be like, you know what? I'll just leave it. You know, it's not different out there.
Then you come back in the morning and that money's still there from the night before, but Billy pops again at -3, and then you're at 3.5, and you got to figure it out. Yeah.
It's very interesting stuff. That you say you moved on air more than looking at the screen. I think, like, we've seen multiple scenarios. Like, I mean, I do stare at an odd screen, you know, a lot of times when I try to, you know, make bets and stuff like that. We have our own little thing, and I see a lot of times where you'll just notice, like, other, like, bookmakers just moving the number because somebody moved it, right? So they'll see Penny moved it, they might see Chris, they might see Circa move it, and then as soon as those 3 have moved it, you just know that within the next, like, 10 seconds to 1 minute, all the other books are going to move it regardless of that. What danger does that have to those books?
The danger to the other books kind of just copying the screen, you're saying?
What danger does a book that's just copying have?
They never truly understand, like, the motivation, I guess, or the actual bets that we're seeing. So, you know, a lot of times there's an effort in the market to kind of keep a number at a certain spot or to move a number somewhere. And, you know, when you're a book like Circa and you have influence over the market, we'll get bets from big syndicates on the non-preferred side. And so I would always kind of look at this and say, when the screen moves, it's because somebody wants the screen to move. And so, not always the case. Like, sometimes there's a large contingent of people playing stuff and eventually the screen blows up. But I think a lot of times there will be coordinated moves where, you know, somebody's betting at Pinnacle, Chris, Circa, the books they know have influence, making large wagers, and then trying to get the line to move from 3 to 3.5 so they can take the 3.5s out at quieter outs. So I think when you're copying and you're not seeing those bets come in and you're not understanding who the players are making those bets, you have potential to just constantly be chasing your tail and putting yourself in these spots where you're taking bets from, you know, you're going to the number and not taking the initial bet that was the head fake bet, and then you get bet back with the real bet. And, like, Circa's taken both bets, so we're okay. We've netted out even on that position. But the copying books have just taken, you know, the side that they were trying to get you to go to so they could grab it. So I think that's where, like, situations like that can be bad for copying books.
Do you ever sit back and just watch these other books copy and have a good laugh about it? Like you might move on air or something, and then you just see the entire screen move. Just like personal question here, like how do you react to that as a bookmaker?
Yeah, there was a time where I would always, like, so Westgate for a long time had a lot of books that would copy them, and I'm friendly with the guy I mentioned before, Ed Salmons, who now works at the Westgate. And I would always text him, and I would call for an amount of time. I used to call Caesars his sister book, because there was a time whenever Westgate would move, Caesars would move. And so it was kind of funny to watch that. When I would see it at Circa, people doing that, you know, I tend to, like, press it as far as I could and see, like, okay, is this book going to move every time I move? And I'm probably a little more cavalier with my line moves. Like, I just like to cause chaos on the screen. Like, that's the goal every Monday morning when I can, to cause utter chaos. I want everyone to be like, what the fuck is going on at Circa? What? Wait, they took a, huh? Like, I want to go from, so a lot of instances, like, I'll give you an example. Let's go back to that Coastal Carolina example. Let's say I was at, like, Coastal 4. Nobody's bet me. I go up to 5. Nobody bets me. I go to 6. Somebody takes a 6. I'm just like, all right, that person's smart. They wouldn't take this unless it's real. Going to 3. I go to 3. Nobody bets it. I'm like, all right, well, let's see how far I can push it. Down to 2. Nobody bets it. Go to 1. Got to push it. Keep it. All right, pick. Like, if you watch me on Monday, Tuesday, it's like, that's 90% of what I'm doing. I'm just trying to confuse everybody. I'm trying to make them make bets they don't want to make. Like, I'm basically trying to bully the market. Like, I'm just trying to, like, and it had a twofold purpose. My other thought was, like, this is worth it also from a branding standpoint. Like, people are just going to think that Circa's, like, just different from everybody because we don't give a fuck about what Pinnacle or Chris are doing. Like, I tried to crap on Pinnacle and Chris at every opportunity. I just tried to, like, and I love those books and I respect them. Way where I felt like we could get like reputation and we could be perceived as one of the big boys by pretty much not caring what those books were at. So, like, you know, I would, if I believed, it's not like I was going just to go, but kind of sometimes I basically was just trying to, like, be aggressive at all points to earn our reputation, but also to probe the market. So it was a twofold approach.
But how many people would you say, so let's say people not betting their own opinion, so screen readers, arbors, stuff like that, how many of those people can actually turn a profit at Circa?
How many people who aren't arbing and aren't
no, who are arbors or screen readers? So not guys who are, like, originating, trying to take, like, the early college numbers, nothing like that. Just, like, pure arbors who are looking at everywhere and being like, okay, I see markets paying in 3, Circa's at 4, I'm going to take the +4. Like, those kind of guys that you've profiled, how many of those can actually beat Circa?
A ton of those guys can beat us. Yeah, I think, like, to me, it feels a little more random, whether they beat us or don't. Kind of like it varies probably how they do against us from month to month, year to year. But those guys should be able to beat us. Like, we're aggressive with line moves and we expose ourselves early in the week. I think against our against our more mature lines, like our lines as of, you know, Friday, Saturday for, like, NFL, I think that we're probably better against them than that. But the interesting thing to watch, though, the more of a reputation you get for having a sharp number, the less you can get people to kind of interact with it when you go off market. Bingo. So there'll be instances where I just get pissed. I'm like, I go to 2 and the market's like, you know, 3.5, and, like, nobody's betting me. And it's like, they're scared. They're like, oh wait, if Circa's at that, then there must be something to that. So even the arbors will stay away a lot of times, like, thinking that, you know, hey, you know, and I think we've converted a lot of arbors also to, like, actual players who hold positions because they trust our line. And so a lot of the guys used to play back wrong sides at us, or I say wrong in quotes, but play back other sides with us, kind of would stop and hold positions that looked favorable according to the Circa line, much like people used to do with the Pinnacle line. So yeah, I think those guys are all, you know, it's kind of random and noisy whether they turn profits, but there's a substantial amount of ones who turn profits probably against us.
When you say wrong side, you mean, I guess, the side that closes with, I guess, like, worse than the closing line? Is that what you consider?
Yeah, and I say wrong side like there's a preferred side every game, and obviously the number dictates, like, the side and what's preferred, but I call the wrong side sometimes, like, you know, when the market is actively trying to hold a number in place. Like, we'll get guys who will bet us, I think, like, on a college basketball or college football total, I've seen guys take up to 8 or 9 pops at us just to hold a number in place. Like, they just want the number there and the market's going, you know, against them, but they know if they can hold Circa at 138, that number will continue to be a play in all the other books they have access to. And so it's kind of fun to watch. It's like, in the beginning, I used to have more of, like, a ego when I started at Circa, and I would want to kind of go head to head against those groups and be like, no, I know this is not the side you want. Like, I'm gonna show you. And I know some of the bettors who are trying to move the markets around get frustrated because they're like, hey, if I make a bet, I'm paying you to move the number. And so that's a discussion I've had with some of the bettors where they're like, no, I bet a limit bet. You're supposed to move the number. And I'm like, well, I'm not moving the number because I don't believe your bet. They're like, well, then you should take more. And so it's kind of like
that is true. Yeah. What is an average position look? You don't have to say amounts, but when you're at Circa, let's say you're trading a game, you know, Bills Rams, for example. At the end, when all is said and done, typically what would Circa be holding on to? Like a net position on something with good CLV? Do you have a guaranteed winner with free rolling one side? Like, how does it kind of go?
We build positions on a game by game basis, and, you know, we're of the belief that the more you kind of write to a game, the better your position kind of gets. The vig takes over at some point. So, you know, ideally, you would hope your position would be to where, you know, you win to a 2-to-1 ratio on the side that you think is the side you've seen the more sharp action on. So, you win $500,000 on a game, or you lose 300,000 or something if the other side comes in. So that's kind of like what we're kind of like shooting for, I think, when you see these games. But like, there'll be certain games we don't have decisions on. We're not forcing decisions necessarily. When you just kind of write the action and you position yourself correctly, you end up kind of building those decisions kind of like the way they should be. And then as you escalate limits and, other play comes in, they kind of naturally occur. So I don't know. It's a fine line. The good bookmaker kind of knows how to start early in the week to accumulate a position, and then when to kind of like treat this game as like something that's maybe a better. There's certain games that spring up where you're like, this is really an opportunity. We've done well all week with how we've kind of positioned ourselves. We have the opportunity to be in a really good position and create a really like plus EV scenario for us. We're going to just like hold all of it. But there's other times where, you look at a game and you're like, losing $1 million in this game is like, it's out of line for what an appropriate decision would be. I'm going to kind of drift back and sell off a little of this. Like, it's all about like kind of like figuring out what an appropriate decision looks like for each game. And the appropriate decision is based on kind of like your bankroll, like, who your boss is, how much money you kind of are playing with as your fictional bankroll, I guess. And like the uncertainty around the game and kind of the position you think you're in. So it's really like a cultural thing. Like, it comes from the guys at the top as to how you accumulate positions and what's an acceptable loss and what's an unacceptable loss, I guess, just like how much is too much. So I feel like I threw a lot at you there.
No, I understand completely. And what honestly, you answered it right at the start, which was like, you said you were either going to win 500 or lose 300. So yeah, we're booking plus money at a good side, for example, and you're just going for EV there. Because a lot of other books might say, we want to make it so that we either break even or win 10K. And that might be something where it's like, okay, you can do that as well if you really want to. Is like, just make sure your position can't lose you that much. At Circa, did you ever have scenarios where you'd have like what would be the longest stretch you think it'd be possible to lose, given what you guys were booking? Like, could you have a losing month, for example?
Yeah, for sure.
Could you have a losing quarter?
That would be hard to do, I think. I think having a losing year would be like impossible.
So
but like, yeah, it all, like I said, it all depends on kind of like your book in a sport. Like, we definitely have losing months, losing quarters, losing years in sports. Like, that happens. Like, sports we don't see enough action in, and but yeah, it's possible.
Yeah. Wait, so you're saying with I was talking just sports. So you could have a losing quarter in sports at Circa. It's possible.
A losing quarter would be highly unlikely to me.
Okay,
like, we would have to run incredibly bad. But I'm saying, like, for a particular sport.
Yeah. Sorry, that makes sense. Yeah, of course. Particular sports, losing quarter is honestly not that many games, even just for like NFL, for example. Like, it could just be
particular sport. If you're offering NASCAR
80 games
or something like that, it could even be even less. Right? It's a race a week.
2 UFC cards.
Exactly.
It's tough to.
Exactly.
Yeah, there you go.
I want to dig into some actual real life examples here. That kind of maybe overlap with some of the hypotheticals we've been talking about. But this gets talked about. I obviously do a lot of betting content related to the NFL, which people can find on Forward Progress on YouTube. But there's been a couple things that have happened consistently this year, pretty much every week, in terms of line moves that have puzzled a lot of people. So the New York Jets seem to attract game day money every single week in the NFL. Didn't happen this past week.
Is this a current real life example?
Real life example. Okay. So we had like 5-6 weeks in a row where the Jets are attracting game day money. You get the sharps are on the Jets. They lose in very embarrassing fashion. Cincinnati Bengals totals, game day, been bet to the unders pretty consistently this year. Those games are flying over the total. We're dealing with small sample sizes here. But I'm curious, when you guys are evaluating this, obviously for the money to move and the line to move this much on game day, there's a substantial amount of money, and it's probably from a group that's widely respected. Do you guys ever internally, ask yourselves whether or not this group might just be wrong on one specific team or event, and maybe we should just not move here and entice more action things? Can you describe what goes into that? Because a lot of people get very confused about these game day moves that they don't understand, especially when that move consistently loses over time, and ask themselves, like, why is this happening?
Well, there's a part of this too, that a lot of the groups we see, obviously they're the bets are being placed with people who are, we call movers, I guess. And so you don't always know, because it changes a lot, like who's moving for who. And sometimes you'll have movers who move from multiple groups. But when we see something like this, you know, we see every week, like let's say they bet the Jets at post every week, you know, we're going to pay them the respect, probably because the limits are high and it makes sense. And we're like, all right, we'll respect the bet. But over time, there can't help but be some kind of like internal discussion on our team with like, you know, here they go with the Jets again.
Right.
And there's some amount of like, you respect it less and less as you see it, and it doesn't appear to be sharp in your opinion. And the more knowledge you have of that specific sport, the more we're going to push back on it. So like, if I'm booking college football and I understand why they're betting something, and I personally don't think that's a sharp angle to be betting it, I'm more likely to push back and be like, that's garbage. It's hard for me to speak about NFL specifically because I don't have as much area expertise in that.
Right.
But I would imagine it's similar where if our head NFL guy is booking something, sees it every week, and just is like, I get why you're betting this, but like, there's no value to be had here. They're going to push back, and we'll probably always give them some kind of move because like, you know, at 100 dimes or 200 dimes a pop, you kind of got to respect it. You can't just kind of like spit in their face because they're probably going to bet you again. So you have to ask yourself, like, you know, am I okay with not moving this and taking another pop for 200,000? And if the answer is no, then you obviously have to move it. Which kind of brings me to a point. Like, I always tell my guys, like, when you make your initial move on any bet, you need to think about the number you're going to and what you would do with a bet like at that number also. You need to be one move ahead of things.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you're just going to keep exposing yourself. So like if somebody takes 7 and you go to 7 dog 15 and they pop you again 7 dog 15, like, are you okay with that? Like, and if you're not, you need to make a stronger move. And like, if you haven't thought 2 bets ahead on every move you're making, then you're probably not that good a bookmaker, because like, it's kind of the same. I compare it to like when you're playing in the field of baseball and, you know, they always taught you as a kid, like, think about where you would go with the ball before it's hit to you. This is like the same thing in bookmaking. You have to be one step ahead to like have any chance against these groups, because these groups are like, they're sharp and they'll bet you when they know you might make a soft move with intent to hit you again.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Love that.
Do you are you ever cognizant of moving into a position, an arbitrage position with 2 questions actually? Moving into an arb with the bet that was just placed. So for example, if someone hits you, I'll use a money line, even easier, -10 aside, someone hits you -110. Now you're moving back and they can get the other side now at +15. Are you cognizant of trying to avoid doing that?
Yeah, you're cognizant. Like, you don't want to expose yourself to an arb with one move normally, but there are times when you throw that out the window. Like, I always like to teach people how to book on like some of these niche sports like NASCAR, because if you paid attention to that kind of rule, and so when we're booking at Circa, we call it like a max move. A max move is basically as far as you can move without scalping yourself. So like if the line was -10 both ways, you know, and you were booking, let's say you're booking to a 20-cent line, you could go, you know, -29 +09,
right,
and technically not be scalping yourself in that -110 bet if you're not including maybe taxes. Maybe taxes make it so it's a scalp. But we call that a max move. And I would get sometimes frustrated at our guys because they'd book a sport like NASCAR and they would still be making max moves. And there's a certain level of like, you know, these numbers just came up. They could be 100 cents off. They could be 150 cents off. And you're making like an 18-cent move. Make a stronger move. Make a 30-cent move. Like when I first started betting NASCAR in Las Vegas, I would go around to these casinos and I would lay -110, -120, -130, -140. I would lay it all the way up to like $1.80 on these bets. And most of these ones I would be laying that on, I probably had it like maybe like 240, 250, but maybe even lower. The matchup wasn't available anywhere else. It was a one-off matchup. Yeah. And I would just average it out to like -140. And I was just like these guys would get mad at me for betting it repeatedly. And as I got smarter, I didn't ram it down their throat as much as I did when I was younger. But at the same time, like, what are you doing? Like, you're going to move 10 cents like from somebody you respect and then complain that they bet it too many times. Like, you're not a robot. You have the ability to move it 60 cents if you want. Like, if you're sitting there worried about getting, you know, middled and scalped on these type bets, like you just don't understand what's happening. Like you need to respond accordingly to the market that you're booking. So, you know, NFL, obviously a much different beast. When you take a money line bet, it would be rare that you would scalp yourself on that bet. But like smaller sports, maybe like golf matchups or NASCAR matchups, or other stuff like that. Like you need to be as aggressive as you can. And arbing is the last thing on my mind when I'm taking sharp action on props or things like that. I just don't care. I want to find the right number.
So another question in regards to line moves there. When you're, how cognizant are you of moving a line into an arb with, let's say, a Pinnacle? What would it take for you to move into arb with Pinnacle on a major market?
You're more cognizant of it. I think we see enough bets at Circa that we don't have to be that cognizant of it because we have enough influence and market influence that they're going to respect our move and probably move out of an arb with us. So in the beginning, when we first started booking at Circa, it was funny. It was kind of just like a standoff between us and some of the bigger books where they didn't want to give us the respect. And again, I'm probably like, they probably didn't even like notice us, but I'm creating this like narrative in my head where they didn't want to give us the time of day or the respect to like even acknowledge our move. So like we'd open the first college football line at 11, Chris pops up and they would just be, I felt like they were opening different from us just to like show that we don't care about the Circa line. And so I think market making books are always cognizant of each other, but at the same time, like the market is going to iron it out pretty quick. And I think that, usually it happens for lower limits early in the week. So it's not that big a deal. It's a bigger deal, like you said, maybe like on a Saturday or Sunday when the game's flowing. And I would be less likely to go to a scalp, on a Sunday morning to Pinnacle when they're taking 200,000 and I'm taking 200,000. Like I don't need to force that bet. So
do you know, like if you did that, how quick does it take for you to get popped on that bet?
I mean, it's if the liquidity is there, it's pretty instantaneous. Like I said before, like people will stay away early in the week because they think we might know something. The day of the game, if there's a lot of liquidity, there's guys who just have enough money in their account to like hit those, immediately. So,
and then bang bang might even be taking both sides and making a couple grand, or it might be actually just planning adding to a position.
Yeah.
Fascinating stuff.
Yep.
We have a lot more topics.
I really quickly want to get into one more Circa thing because it's very timely and it happened this past weekend in the NFL. Circa took a $3 million bet on the Eagles money line against the Carolina Panthers. I think it was roughly in the range of -700.
What was the scenario there? So did the guy have a bad price, or did he? I didn't even end up following it. Did he end up with a good closing price or a bad closing price?
It looks like he laid.
I'm assuming it was market.
Yeah, it was pretty much market. Yeah, laid -700-ish. Yeah, on this bet. I had a bunch of people reach out to me, by the way, on this, and it's like, well, don't they have posted limits at Circa? Like, how is this guy able to get down this much? Can you walk me through that? And also, I did notice this was marketed into oblivion, by the way, as well. Derek Stevens was tweeting about it, Circa account. Is there ever like an overlap between trading and marketing as well, where you guys might be like, we don't really want to take this, but there's actually a marketing benefit to this? So if you could answer that, it's, I guess, a twofold question.
Yeah, to answer the second part of it, like marketing and myself were very probably like, I liked our marketing team, but I was just very at odds kind of like with them for various things like that. I like, one of my core beliefs is like not talking about any bet that I've taken from a customer. And so again, I'm not criticizing anything that is done, but I just don't like that. And I've been kind of outspoken on Twitter about that at some points, but I understand it. I mean, it gets press and it's cool to know like what books are taking what action. So I'm not like trying to, I don't know, second guess that decision. But our marketing team will come to us a lot of times with like, hey, do you want to take this match or smack bet? It'd be good publicity for us. And I don't know, I just make the decisions based on like where I sit and what risk that I think is appropriate for Derek Stevens or whoever I'm working for at the time. I think that's the bet. Again, to give a bad bookmaker, a good bookmaker kind of like comparison here, I think there's a lot of bookmakers who decide what is appropriate risk based on their own personal kind of thresholds and opinions on like relating to their bankroll, relating to their experience. And the job of a bookmaker who's working for somebody is to understand the head man, to understand or woman, and understand like what their goals are, what their objectives are with running a sports book, what appropriate risk is to them. I should be able to answer without talking to my boss what's the biggest bet he would take on this particular game at any time. Not to say I won't run it by him, but I should understand who he is and what we're playing with enough to make that call. And I think these bookies, when you go in, and it's been my experience my whole career, especially in Las Vegas, you go in and they're looking at this bet like they're giving it to you out of their own pocket, like they're booking out of the cash out of their wallet. And it's crazy. Like, you work for a $1 billion casino and you're not taking my $1,000 bet because you think that's a big bet. The guy who runs the casino, like again, Derek Stevens running Circa, like, he's not even gonna care about a $10,000 bet, a $20,000 bet. Like, I mean, you have to take bets that are in line with the objectives and like his personal kind of philosophy and who he is. So I think that gets lost on a lot of operators, and I think they personalize things. And I think that's why you see operators not wanting to take bets, because I'm kind of going off on a tangent here, but they don't want to take the bet because they feel like it's basically an admission that they had a bad line on the board. They fear the bettors in a way where they think the bettors are winning 80% of their bets, and they are just naturally conservative. They're not people with a history of betting. They don't understand, the motivations and how bettors are betting and why they bet. And I think most professional bettors are a lot. I don't want to say, I'm not saying they're degenerates, but they're a lot more gambly than operators give them credit for. And there's a lot of motivations that are different on different sports and different bets. Like, UFC to me is one of the best booking sports in the world because it's so popular. You get a lot of groups who may not necessarily have a huge edge, but they want to participate because they like watching the fights. They just want to bet the fights. And, we're beating them. And I know they might not be losing to everybody, but if anything, they're scraping out a really small profit, but they just want to be involved. And I think that's the case for some markets. But then again, that group might turn around and have the sharpest college football stuff in the world. So you have to understand, what their particular bets mean in each market. And that all comes, again, down to profiling. I totally ran with your question another direction, but yeah.
If the bet was flipped, obviously I understand this would be a bigger bet size and base amount, but let's say it was 400,000 to win $3 million. Do you think Circa would have taken that still?
I can't. I'll answer it from when I was there. 400,000 to win $3 million on that game. On the Panthers.
Panthers plus whatever 700, let's say, for 400,000. They wouldn't have taken it.
Limits at that time, by the way, were 20K. That's where posted limits were at that time.
Somebody tries to bet me a 20K on the Panthers money line early in the week. I'm just like, I don't know. Like, again, I'm judging that by my sharp spidey sense instinct of be scared when someone's trying to bet a horrendous team as a dog early in the week on a money line. It basically means they think the price is off. Playing in kind of the non-point spread market, but no, I wouldn't have taken that bet. If it was again, it depends who it is. So my number one thing that I always say, I would say I'm literally trying to take every bet I can, and I'll work with you as much as I can. And a lot of the determinants whether I take that bet, obviously who you are and how the market responds to your bet, but can I work with that bet? Are you going to take 5-1 on that game, and then at closing time it's going to be minus 450 on the favorite, and I'm just out of position, I can't sell it. So I'll take a big bet. I'll extend to people who are sharp and are proven winners with me. If they come in, I said this to somebody the other day. If you come in, ask for a conversation with me and think enough to come in and talk to me man to man, and don't lie to me and just tell me hey, we're trying to get down X amount on every game. We play NFL, we play this. Don't pretend you're an idiot, because people do that to me all the time. And I'm you don't need to. We're just having a real conversation. I'll work with you. I'll try to help you get down. My biggest accomplishment would be able to fill your whole position, not move the market, and kind of book to it because you're pretty good at it. So, I make decisions based on, can I work with the action, not is this a sharp guy? If Billy Walters or whoever, I keep using his name kind of, understood as the sharp better, but if he comes in and talks to me about getting extended limits and it makes sense for me, and he tells me the market's not going to go crazy, and I can work with 100 dimes on Tuesday, I'll strike a deal if it makes sense for me and I can make money and we can both make money. Yeah.
All right.
Fascinating stuff. I feel if you bet the dog early in the week, there's so much more that could happen before the game starts. For example, they could be betting that, and then let's say Jalen Hurts is ruled out.
I would immediately be concerned.
You'd be concerned. You'd be like, wait, what? You'd be like, what happened?
Yes.
What happened?
Yeah.
Meanwhile, if you're laying minus 700, it's okay, who's going to be out for Carolina that would even make this line move that much?
Right.
Nobody.
Exactly.
So it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I'm with you. Johnny's prepared a bunch of hypotheticals. He's big into the hypothetical world and got very excited.
This is my best work, but I figured we can play a little game because you are a top bookmaker. The game was supposed to kind of be would you limit this better or not? But we know you're not you don't want to limit anybody. You want to just make sure you're taking on all comers, and that's part of the model. So I guess what it would kind of be, we have to shift this is, do you think, based on the information of what I'm about to give you, do you think this bettor will win long term betting into you at this exact amount. Fair enough? Let me know if you have any other questions as we go, but it should be pretty intuitive after the first.
Yeah, let's try. Let's try.
Okay. This is whatever I give you is all the information you have. Okay. So I know you might be like, oh, I would look into this. You're just going blind on this. Okay. NFL, a guy's been betting you this season only, NFL touchdown scorers. He's just betting guys to score a touchdown. Yes. Okay. He's betting $100 bet size, but he's got thus far this season, he's got a 10% ROI, and total, he's up $2,400. Do you think he beats you long term?
Based on what you've told me, no.
So based on that, just that, you're saying you would continue to book that player on anything?
Yeah, the number one thing that would hit my head first is the size of the bets. And granted, prop markets are a little unique because there are originators who play smaller and win. But what you're telling me is like $100 just kind of random anytime touchdown bets. And at some point he's been betting all season. I think that, I don't know, his bankroll, he would just be more aggressive, I would think, in like the sizing of his bets. So the bet amount is probably what would trigger me to be fine with any of his action. I don't think,
But it's not, would you be fine with his action? Because obviously he's not going to take you for a huge amount, but it's more would this player win or not? Yeah.
Sorry. The bet amount is what would lead me to believe that he probably will not long-term win, just because I think he would be pressing his edge more if he had it. So if he had an edge, he'd be betting more is my thought for that one. So I don't think that long-term he has an edge and would win based on what you're telling me.
Okay. Next. Yeah, no, I like the rationale there. Okay. I like the rationale. Okay. Next one up. So this bettor, he bets at Circa Sports. He has no other bets in the account outside of he only max pops you for NFL right at post. So all his bets are coming in within 10 minutes of post. Typically, he's just betting Circa and like he's betting a market price. It's not like he's only betting the games at Circa. He's betting like, let's say 5-6 games a week, 100K max pop. If you have higher, he's taking the max at all times. He's getting no CLV. This year, he's up 1.1 mil with you.
Based on what I've seen, he's probably a winner. The only other scenario where he wouldn't be a winner with us, so he's definitely a winner. The question is whether he's a winner with us or not. He could be playing back some of his positions late, and therefore he could be a loser with us. But I have to respect him because he is a winner, and I'm pretty sure he's a winner if he's betting like that. So either way, like whether he's winning with us or not is immaterial. Because if I gave him more, he would bet more, and he'd probably just pile on where he had edges at the end or something. And so yeah, he's a winning player long term.
You would you'd book him obviously because you don't turn away anyone, but you do think he'd win with you long term.
It's easier for me to say he's a winner long term than it is to say he's going to win with me long term. But he has the ability to win with me long term if he felt like it.
Okay.
If you want to word it that way.
God, interesting.
So, yes.
No, understood. Okay.
There's a lot of guys like that. There's a lot of guys like that who basically control how much they win with us because they just want to not get out of control. And like, so yeah, I think the best players are very well aware of whether they are going to win with Circa Sports or not.
Okay, next one up. So this player is playing at FanDuel. He's playing small amounts, but he's taking only like the bonus bets and then a couple off-market prices. So he's only taking the bonus bets and the off-market prices. Typically he's betting anywhere between, like he'll even bet $5 if it'll take it on a specific one, or some of his bets will be up to like $500. All right, that's all the information you have. Do you think that player wins long term?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it's obvious he's looking for bonuses and playing you kind of when you're off and just trying to kind of hit the numbers where he's got the best EV. And yeah, I would think that he beats us long term. Yes.
Do you think that player will ever be someone that will lose at sports betting to the books, or do you think they'll only ever make good bets?
It's really funny. So we'd have these guys who my thought is they were probably working with somebody else when they were betting, and they'd bet with us for a year or two and they'd be super sharp stuff. And then one day they just start playing like parlays, or they just start playing like, and not that parlays means you can't be sharp, but they'd play parlays at market numbers that for lower amounts, and we knew they weren't sharp. So we would always kid Chris Bennett. We'd be like, Chris, you broke that guy. He was a sharp and you broke him. He couldn't win through you, so you flipped him. He's a square now. Like, you got him. So we always thought that was funny. But yeah, I think that guy is probably disciplined enough to beat most books long term with how he's wagering.
That's basically producer Jacob over here that you're describing.
Is that producer Jacob?
Jacob's moves.
Okay.
So. Yeah.
Next up, so you can sub out the sport if you don't really have experience with this, but I had it as betting KBO, so the overseas baseball, let's say. They're max betting whatever you post, getting good CLV, so getting anywhere between like a 5 and a 10% CLV. But they're down this year and last year. So a 2-year sample, they're down 15% ROI. So this guy's clearly originating. He's betting early week, max betting you, and he's getting CLV, but he's down. Is that a winner?
What time do those games start? Like Pacific time? Like they're like 2 a.m, or is that like the start time?
I didn't build that into the question. That's all the info you have is this. No, I'm kidding.
Okay, I think they start like 2 a.m. So again, there was a time when I was betting like the NASCAR Truck Series, and the whole market was based on my opinion. And I'm sure Rob's had experience with stuff like this, where like, you have a price like $2 and you start laying $1.30, $1.40, and then you stop. But there's so much reaction to your bets that you look a half hour later and the price is $3, and you just have enormous amounts of CLV, but like there's nobody else with an opinion really deploying capital at it like that. So you have to ask yourself, like, am I sharp on this? Are my numbers good? Or is this just like a self-fulfilling prophecy of like what I'm betting and my influence in the market? So this sounds kind of like something where this guy is like, I don't know, he's either a degenerate and he's just like betting into a market that's really jumpy and is like, moving around a lot based on his opinions, or he's a sharp guy making bets and he's just like running bad, or he's like, he lost his edge maybe. If we're talking about all he plays is KBO and this is what he's betting, this is the toughest one you've given me. I'm basically asking myself, like, is he a degenerate with money who has influence? Like, I don't know. That could be 50-50. I'm gonna say that this guy's gonna. My gut wants to say he's not going to beat me long term, but this is the shakiest one. I can't give a good answer here.
Okay, interesting. Okay,
this one's shaky. This one's shaky.
How are we liking this game? Should I keep going here?
I saw you write a couple more there. So
well, I just had him on my phone, so I'm just writing the notes for him. Okay, so this one.
That one I wanted more information.
You need more information. Really okay, bad. This one is honestly my favorite. This is my favorite one here. Okay, so this guy, He's not necessarily like a square in the account, but you look and he's just been placing like a couple rec bets here. Like he might bet on a UFC fight, he might bet on a Golden Knights game. Like he's a local guy, okay? Probably a local Vegas guy. He's betting at Circa. Yep. Every Monday morning, he comes in person over the counter and he max bets a bunch of like NFL futures. He's clearly building a portfolio. And seemingly he's getting like not necessarily off-market prices, but when he's betting, like that's typically moving later in the week. And like, you're like, oh, this guy's actually been getting some good positions. And he's up on you lifetime on NFL futures. He's up 110K, but he's dunked back like 50K on other stuff. Do you think this guy wins long-term?
Just to clarify, he's betting futures and the futures are moving, or he's betting futures and the teams he's playing are seeing like support on the game by game, like weekly basis?
He's betting all futures involved with NFL. So he's betting even like coach of the year, player of the year. He's betting at other books. He's betting like to win the division, to win the thing, to win the championship, all the stuff. Like he's betting season win totals earlier. Anything you've got, he's coming in. He's preseason, he's got a big portfolio, and every week he's coming and adding to those positions. And what I mean is he's betting market numbers at the time, but those are typically moving in his favor, near the end of the week.
Right. Have I talked to this guy? Have I like been able to meet him? Can I ask questions about like the interaction?
He comes in, he has no backpack, and he comes in with just cash in his pocket.
Duffel bag.
No duffel bag, no backpack. He's coming in. Usually he's just wearing
Does he have
like
a southern accent?
No,
he, a southern accent?
He's a Vegas local, and he's usually just wearing like jeans and a t-shirt, like nothing major. No belt.
Okay. Well, the first rule is never extend limits to a guy with a southern accent. That's just like the kiss of death. If
Why
some
is
guy
that?
Walks in, because it's been proven over the years. Like anytime I've ever said anything I've ever kind of like in a way that I was a little bit uncomfortable with the guy had a southern accent, I'm just like that was probably not optimal. Like, so that could be up for the negative EV move of the show, extending the guys with southern accents. If they have a blazer on, run. If he has a blazer and a southern accent, oh my god.
What if they wear a mask into the sportsbook and pretend that they're drunk? Do you extend higher limits in those instances?
Wear a mask, wear a COVID mask and a Brady jersey.
Like a COVID mask.
Yes.
No, the COVID mask you don't want to extend to. COVID mask is dangerous.
Dangerous, they're hiding. Okay, how about this one? Guy bets MLB
I
overnight.
didn't
Sorry.
Your guy's a winner. Yeah, your guy's a winner.
Okay. This guy comes in, he's betting app only at Circa, MLB overnights, okay? He's been betting it for like 3 seasons. He's max betting you on overnights, but I think it's like 2,000 limit, maybe 1,000 limit. And he's up right now. He's up 50K lifetime over 3 years. But when you run reports and you look, like he's not getting CLV on the closing prices like the next day when the game starts.
That seems impossible for baseball, because baseball is like the one sport where like overnight CLV is just like inevitable if you have any knowledge, I feel like. But I think he's a winner, but he couldn't win if he was betting the day of the game. Like that guy would have no shot if he had to bet like within 4 hours of like post, I feel like. But he can probably win on overnights, because I feel like, especially early in the season, I feel like anybody who pays someone attention probably beat baseball overnights.
Okay. I have 2 more for you, and then we'll close up this game. So this person is betting at Circa. He's only betting like the in-play version that you guys have, and he's winning. You have no other information other than that. He's beating us up on in-play.
Yeah, he's a winner. I don't need a lot of information on that.
So you think Circa's beatable on live?
The way we're doing lines right now, I think we were beatable, at least when I was there. And again, it's probably because we're kind of like or like crowdsourcing our line a little more than we would like love. I think the first couple of years we were booking live, we were using Deck Prism, and I felt really confident with those lines, and I felt like I didn't think we were very beatable outside of like maybe like pass posting us. But I think the way we're doing it now, we're probably a little more susceptible. But that said, like sharps don't play. We haven't seen a lot of sharp action in our in-game markets. We just haven't experienced a lot of that. It seems. I'm not sure whether it's just like a general lack of liquidity that's going to cause them not to pay attention to those markets, or I'm not really sure the reason. But yeah, we've not really had that issue with in-game.
Okay, and then last one for you. So this guy was he had a DraftKings. He's been betting at DraftKings app. He is betting massive from the start. He's betting minimum 50K bet size on anything. And he's just jamming pretty much anything. Like it's all random, all sports, a lot of parlays, sometimes straight, sometimes parlays. Guy went down $1 million. He's like a super VIP now. And this year he's betting mostly parlays, but he's hit a couple of them. And now he's up 5 million on his DraftKings account, and he's still firing. Is this guy a winner long term?
He's not, because DraftKings is still taking his action most likely, unless he's really good at hiding it, I guess. I mean, he could, but I will say that it's become substantially harder in the past 2 years to kind of like profile people off small samples, because the groups are more sophisticated and kind of understand how the bookmakers think. And so there's been a lot of times where we feel safe extending play to certain players, and then, the market just kind of, and it's not immediate, but like over time, they're kind of just like putting us in positions where we're not comfortable. What's happened a lot of the time is I'll agree to take on extended liability from somebody, and then I'll get to the point where I think their action is so sharp that I'm like, why am I not just making this the limit? Like the limit's 20,000 and I'm giving them 50, and their stuff seems to be the sharpest stuff I'm seeing. All right, I'm just going to move the limit to 50K. Because like most of the time it devolves to that. And so I think myself and Chris Bennett we're both on the same page with this. Moving forward, I think you'll see, at least with my involvement, I will probably push for like a standard limit at the next book I work at. It's just too much work to like try to extend and try to profile. And again, I think I'm doing it with pure intentions. I think I'm doing it for the right reasons. Like I want to help everybody get down, but at the same time, it's just become too tough because there's so many different markets and play is so sophisticated. And like, in the old days, I felt like it was easy to profile. You're just like, all right, this guy bet dog and unders, he's probably sharp. This guy's bet favorites and overs, he's probably square. Like, it's not like that anymore. Like, these guys know what they're doing. They can hide their play. They might only play the sharp sides that happen to coincide with favorites and overs with you, just to kind of throw you off the scent. And the biggest groups have gotten really good at that. And they know how to like kind of, get you to agree to take more. And again, I think I'm different because I think I'm not doing it like this guy's a loser, I want to extend. I'm doing it from a place of like, I want to extend if you can. But the more that people are kind of not coming in and having the discussion face to face with me, the less likely I am to extend these days. So if you really want extended limits, you kind of just come talk to me and like try to be up and up on the up and up with us, and we'll do our best. Yeah.
What's something that someone could do that would make you say, you know what, F this guy, he's out. Like, I would actually cut him off.
So when I was young, I like thought my job was to be like the soup Nazi. When I worked at the Westgate, there would be like lines in the morning and we only had one writer. And I would get really mad if people like started yelling like, hey, open up another window. What the fuck is it? Like, I've thrown people out before just because I thought they were obnoxious. And then as I had time to reflect on that after I quit the Westgate, I was like, that was really immature. And I was just like looking for a fight, and I did not need to like handle it like that. So I went back into Circa thinking, as long as somebody isn't like abusing the writer, like saying something just like out of line, cursing them out, or if they break their word to me. So we had instances where I would call somebody and be like, hey, we're doing our best. We have 30 halftimes on the board at once. It's obvious that you're just waiting for like the one game that we like didn't shut in time to take a shot. Like, I understand that it's my responsibility. I'm not trying to punish you for that, but like, that's all you're betting. And the reason we're leaving it open is because we want to get as many people in as possible. Even if you got in like 30 seconds late, whatever, but you're making it like, we're 2 minutes into the game and we missed one. Okay. And you have like 12 bets in your account and every one is one that we missed on a Saturday. Like, I want to ask you man to man, like, we're trying to do right here by you. I have to ask you, like, please do not like make a concerted effort just to hit that and that's it. And if somebody said, okay, I'll do that, and then they did it again, I think there's two people that I was like, we're gonna ask you not to play here anymore because you pretty much like lied to me and said that, you would, I'd rather the guy be like, fuck you, get out of here. I'm gonna keep doing it. And like, I'd rather him say that. But the point you like tell me, like we're having a discussion and you give me your word, like I don't like people lying to me. Like that just like rubs me the wrong way. But that's only happened like one or two times, and I think the second time might have been the same guy as the first. So there's like technically been one guy that I asked not to play anymore, and we closed his account. That's the only guy I've ever closed.
Still tweets about it to this day.
That's the guy.
I don't think that was the guy though, because I wasn't there when that happened. I think I think Point Sex was a different guy.
Oh, okay. You knew exactly what I was talking about.
You'd rather him just tell you, no, F you, I'm going to still do it.
I would agree with you though. I personally would rather somebody be upfront with me, even if it's something I don't want to hear, rather than lie to my face.
Right. And I'll give you a hallmark of the Circa Sports communication that I established was we are going to call every single player and have a face-to-face discussion with them, or at least on the phone, and talk to them and give them some heads up as to what we're experiencing that we don't like, and give them an opportunity. Like, I stressed this so much with our team when we started. Give the player the benefit of the doubt at every instance. It's the only way to build a business. Like, you can't wait for them proactively to be nice to you. And Las Vegas sports bettors in particular had such a history of being abused by operators and just like, crapped on and like treated like they weren't welcome. So expect these guys to be a little gun shy when it comes to like, thinking you have their best interest in mind. And so we won these bettors over, I think, one by one, with the fact that we actually cared, that we called. And I was like, hey, I know you might do this at other books, but our system can't block it out. Can you not parlay, I don't know, first half game to first half or to full game, full game or something like that, just stuff like that. And everybody was enormously receptive. For the most part, 99% of people were just like, no, that makes total sense. Thank you for calling me. There's a history of books just like passive aggressively shutting down accounts, like trying to teach lessons, trying to say, okay, I'm going to show this guy. And when we took over Circa, we had to work that out from a lot of our guys who had just been trained under people who were like, it's like scarcity mindset, where they're just like, these guys are out to fuck me and they're going to screw me over and I'm going to get them first. And like, you can't run a business. It doesn't matter what business it is. You can't run any business with that attitude. If you don't love your bettors and love your customers in any business you're going to fail. And so I thought that was like one of the like worst parts and the most toxic parts about Las Vegas sportsbooks was they all had this like entitlement of like, we don't have to take your bet. You're lucky. We're doing you a favor by taking your bets. And like every time I walked into a book, I had a massive chip on my shoulder when I bet in Las Vegas because I felt that from every single guy. So I just wanted to be like, all right, you don't respect me and you think you can take a $10 bet from me and, on something like I'm going to ram this down your throat every chance I get. I'm going to kiosk jam the hell out of you. And so I understand that feeling that other bettors have and why they have that. Like it's only natural when somebody like, abuses you for so long to be like, fuck you. Like, no, I don't want to like play by your rules. Like,
yep.
So
Totally agree.
So
well said.
We've been on for quite a while. I wanted to ask one question, and I know we did want to ask you about what you're kind of working on now because it's kind of been in the dark for a lot of people who might have followed you at Circa and stuff like that. But before we do, if you were a sports bettor, which I know you were, a time ago, right now, what's the one area where you think it's like most vulnerable for these books, given your background? Where would you start to try to like attack these guys if you want to make the most amount of money?
From everything I'm reading, it seems like same game parlay really has a lot of opportunity. And that's not firsthand by my experience, but I'm working for a company right now. This kind of segues into it. The company I'm working for is called Mojo, and we're a B2B provider right now for sportsbooks who are looking to kind of enhance their prop menu and price discover a little more aggressively. So the thing that we're doing that other providers aren't is we are relying, yes, on our sims and our models and our world-class data scientists, but we're creating like a quant team to basically build like algorithmic reactive functions that will interpret bet flow, interpret market information, and make optimal moves throughout like an entire prop menu. So understanding correlations between different props and understanding like what this bet in this passing yards market means to all the wide receiver props, all the tight end props. Like my goal is not to like make pricing so it's more efficient so that sharp players can't play. It's to give the books a way to take bigger bets. And again, not all of them want to do this with this, but I think they can market make to a higher degree and cater the pricing more to their clientele than to just be handed a price by like a data science team and say, we think Mahomes pass yard should be 260. Yeah. Good luck the rest of the way. Like to us, that's going to be just a jumping off point where we come up with that model price. And then we basically say, okay, but now what is the market doing? What is the bet flow doing? And how do we connect all this information that we're seeing and like kind of disperse it back through our model? Because at scale, the real power of bookmaking is I have access, if I'm taking the bets, to the greatest bettors in the world, to the greatest models in the world. I can kind of like see at scale, at mass, like all of these bets and make a really good decision. Whereas like one sharp group sitting, in Las Vegas, they might only have access to their models and their opinion, but I can have access to all of that. So that's the real edge that I think the bookmaker has if he's taking bets. So we want to give that edge to like the people in the prop markets in a way where they can afford to be more aggressive. They can have fairer payouts. They don't have to be so defensive. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think the prop markets are where the future is. I think everybody loves engaging with like, especially in the NBA, NFL, like with these players on a week-to-week basis. It's just exciting. It brings in the younger generation. And like, I don't think it has to go the route of like, these are only for entertainment. I think they can be entertainment for the casual bettor, but I also think some of these markets, like you asked earlier, I think they can be price discovered to a point where there's real liquidity in some of these prop pools. So yeah,
that's really interesting.
But how would you even price discover that? Like, because there's basically infinite combinations when it comes to what you can do in like just one NFL SGP.
So our whole theory is that you can kind of we're tweaking our model constantly. So we can kind of like A and B are different props that comprise the same game parlay and be like, okay, we know there's a lot of liquidity in Mahomes passing touchdowns. We know there's a lot of liquidity in Travis Kelce anytime touchdown. We've seen enough bets that we feel confident about that pricing. Maybe we have some uncertainty around Kelce receiving yards. Mm-hmm. We can kind of like triangulate, not to get too complicated here because I'm not the person to talk like complicated stuff. We can kind of triangulate the price for Kelce receiving yards by knowing that we've properly price discovered those other two markets like pretty well, and we're pretty certain in those prices, and then kind of hone backwards in on like what the Kelce receiving yards prop should be. So that's kind of like the basis of our hypothesis is that we price discover the most liquid markets and then back out prices. And as you go along, okay, now we've backed out the Kelsey receiving yards prop. Now we kind of feel like we know all three of these props. So when those markets are played along with another mark where we have uncertainty, we can kind of back out that fourth market.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of like the thought behind it. We have really talented guys with a lot of like financial markets backgrounds. Like a lot of we have a Goldman Sachs quant who's doing a lot of work for us. And most of the guys have finance market experience. So my goal was to go to work with people with like a high level understanding of these other more like mature markets. And maybe I could blend some of my sportsbook knowledge with what they've done in bigger markets. And we could come up with ways to kind of like price uncertainty in a way that books can take bigger bets. That's not to say that other books want to take the bigger bets. But for me, I'm building a product that I know will be useful at the next sportsbook that I run and will allow me to take bigger bets. So that's kind of like my motivation in being involved with this project.
Understood. I wish you guys the best of success with that. It would be a crazy tool to have like on your end as a bookmaker to be able to price discover individuals. It just seems like a crazy hard problem to solve, right? Because most of the time, even if you're doing exactly what you said, like basically taking one leg and be like, okay, Travis Kelce, this leg is currently mispriced. Like it's not that leg's mispriced. It's that
it's mispriced in conjunction.
It's mispriced in conjunction with like only one thing of the other 1,000 things you can put it with. So if you know, for example, that I don't even know what a perfect example I can give in regards to like Kelce receptions, but you might know that Kelce is going to get targeted if they have the backup QB in. So you might put Mahomes to get under alt 10 plus pass attempts, hoping for an injury, and then hoping that the backup will come in, and then put that with Kelce alt over 8.5, and it's like some crazy payout, and you're like, wow, this is like ridiculous. So it's not that the individual legs are mispriced, because I don't think most of them are.
Well, there's lots of random scenarios. It's like, a certain running back will get into the game if his team is trailing, whereas he's not going to get in the game if the team's like, it's all these little nuances that by following specific teams and games, you start to pick up on these little types of trends, I guess, basically.
So my hope is that from a broader view, that over time we can pick up on the tendencies of sharp players and what they tend to do with injury information, how they tend to exploit our systems. Like this is all going to come down to like us being able to like process large amounts of like data and just kind of reverse engineer the sharp players' tendencies and hopefully program things in a way where we're alerted when we see patterns. So I think the real work of our project is going to start once we go live and have that flow. Because, I agree with you. There's going to be, the way there is now, there's going to be massive holes and blind spots and all these things. But I think the same way the bettors are kind of ramping up, like technology wise, I think the books are going to do that too. And so to some degree, my one buddy jokes, he's like, this is basically like going to turn into like a war between computers. And like, the better sides are going to be like probing for weakness, and we're going to be like running counter intel and trying to like, it's kind of inevitable to some degree. But I do think the weapon that we have is we'll have access to every bet that we see come across, and we're going to learn from it. Like that's what bookmakers do manually. That's what I do at Circa. Every bet that I see, I file away either, in a Google Doc or in my head and try to remember, what I saw, but that's not efficient. Like the only way to properly do this and do it at scale is to really like drill down in the data and have some sort of automation involved. So again, I don't know that this is possible, but I know it's possible to run the book that I'm like dreaming about in my head. And again, I don't think this isn't going to be like, in my mind, a death sentence for sharp bettors. I think if anything, it should be like a liquidity driver in a way that like can beef up the liquidity in a lot of these markets in a way that a lot of the pros who need a certain amount of liquidity to come into a market are going to be incentivized to enter. And that's just like, I want to go wherever there's liquidity and wherever people want to be. I want to drive liquidity in that market. I don't care if it's darts or like badminton or KBO or whatever it is. It's immaterial to me. Whatever the people want to bet and wherever there's liquidity, that's where the bookmaker should want to go. So
what is your vision for the ideal book? Whatever you can share.
I don't know. I mean, Circa had a lot of pieces of that. I mean, I think that like I'm in love with the retail sports betting experience, which probably makes me a dinosaur. Like I love the like I love the interaction and people coming into a room and just feeling kind of like the diversity of players in that room. Like I compare like the old Stardust and like the old Las Vegas Hilton, now the Westgate. Like these rooms just had an energy about them where there was all kinds of bettors, there was money in the air. Like I'm always going to be addicted to that. So I think anything I do will be born out of like building a brand around like a retail experience. But that's not to say that I won't concentrate and try to have the best kind of like app experience or the best tech experience available. So like in my mind, I'm just like, I like to build brands. I feel like I did a decent job building the Circa brand. Just by the way that like people, I'll tell you, like one of my greatest accomplishments I felt like with Circa, or the thing that brings me the most joy, I felt like we tried to do the right thing by our players at all times. And there will be situations, maybe like with what you were talking about, Rob, with this limiting or kicking out a player for pass posting us, where people on Twitter would defend us against a play sucks.
I know.
And I'm like, this is fucking crazy. I'm like, they're defending a sports book against kicking somebody out. I'm like, that's the biggest compliment I could ever be paid in my life. It means that like we accomplished everything that we wanted to and more. Like that blew my mind. And I was just like, okay, like that's awesome. Like I love the fact that but like I have an issue with that I threw one guy out. I think it's bullshit. I wish we didn't do that. Like, but everybody's defending me. And I'm just like, that's crazy.
Well, part of it is that Jeff Benson has ingrained himself in the gambling Twitter culture, and he's very abrasive, but like real, I will say. Well, relative to like other brands out there in the recreational sportsbook space, you're not seeing like their customer service managers engaging in a real capacity.
But their customer service managers are not even, they're like bots and stuff.
Well, that's right. That's exactly what I mean. So there's an element of realness, and it really creates like, I have no incentive to support Circa personally, me, right? I don't bet through Circa personally. Obviously, there's movers and stuff like Matt talked about earlier, but I feel like it's a brand that I'm proud to, support just because of Jeff, honestly, and him like being ingrained in the gambling Twitter.
Did you hire
culture.
Jeff?
Yeah, so Jeff was the person that I felt was the only person in the world who could execute our vision on customer service. I met Jeff in 2000, probably like 12. He was a ticket writer at Palace Station Casino in Las Vegas. And I would go in to make bets on just like whatever sports I was betting at the time. And he would always greet me like, hi, Mr. Metcalf, and have sheets ready for me. And like, I was just like, this kid's phenomenal. He's like a throwback to like the 1950s. I'm just like, if I ever have a book, I will hire this kid. I tried to get him a job at Westgate, but he would never call them. I was just, every time I go in, I'd be like, Jeff, call Westgate and I'm going to get you a job. I'm like, you're hired, just call. And this is when I wasn't even working at Westgate, but I told them, I'm like, you got to hire this kid. He never called, lucky for me. When I got the job in 2018, I think Jeff was either the first or second person I went to. And I was basically like, I want to task you with like building like the most elite customer service sportsbook like in the world. And I think me and Jeff, I think we just like went back and forth and inspired each other, like taking each other to the next level of like what customer service looks like. And I really like got obsessed with customer service when I was betting because it was so bad at the books. And like I started watching a lot of Gary Vaynerchuk content, and the thing that he helped me with was I had always been kind of in favor of customer service, but I never really like had like my ideals crystallized the way he did. And he was so much about just like, doing the right thing by the customer whenever you can, like the right thing is the right thing. That just, I don't know, it just gave me like a template for like, this is what I believe, and I'm going to keep stepping in this direction, and I'm not going to just have it be like an accessory to what we do. I'm going to make it like the main thing. And so Jeff came in, and like, honestly, like when I used to work the line in Las Vegas, I thought I was like the best customer service person in Vegas history. I thought I was amazing. But like compared to Jeff Benson, I was just like, I was a role player and he was like LeBron. Like it was just, he took things and like the ideas that we had and just executed them to a point where like nobody else in the world could. He's like the reason Circa Sports is successful. Like I don't want to diminish myself and Chris Bennett, but like we wouldn't be where we were without Jeff Benson's dedication and his true understanding that like, when you're interacting with customers, you're setting an expectation for the brand and for how you're treated. Like the reason people interact with a brand is consistency. They come in, they expect a certain experience, and it's executed every time. There are not exceptions. And when something goes wrong, the staff is quick to be like, hey, we fucked up. How do we make this right? And they really care about that. And Jeff is just like, he does that every day. Like when we screw up, he's the first to admit it. He's on the phone. He's telling you like, hey, this is what happened. He's honest. He's direct. Like all the things that it takes to have a customer service brand, like Jeff just exemplifies those. So yeah.
I've only had positive experiences.
He's a
working
beauty,
with him.
man.
And
He's
honestly, take this as an endorsement, I guess, from Rob and I. When I go to Vegas now, like I stay at Circa, like no questions asked. It's great service, good property, best for sports betting by a mile. Like if you're betting sports in Vegas, there's none of the other sports books, like in terms of viewing experience, even come like remotely close. It's crazy at this point. Matt, we'll get into plus EV, minus EV, but I just thought of this right now. It's a question that keeps coming up. I've still seen it on Twitter a bit. There's no better guy to ask this question to than you. We had it in the past where people were saying for like a Q&A, they asked us, which is the quote unquote right side to be on. So it's one betting syndicate with a $50 million bankroll is on side A, and side B is 5 separate individual sharp guys with a $1 million bankroll each. That's all the information you have, which is the quote unquote right side.
The dollar amounts don't mean a whole lot. Like, I mean, they do and they don't. Obviously, like the bigger, more successful a group is, like the more they bet, that's kind of like, it kind of matters. But there's always like a running power ranking in our head of like kind of who trumps who and who are our best players. Like, honestly, there's like 5 guys who bet at Circa during the time I was there where I'm not like I'm scared of them, but like when they played, I was just like, I paid attention. And so seeing a couple of those guys line up on one side, I'm going to pay probably more attention to that no matter what size their bets are in relation to maybe the guy who is just betting the max on everything. There's a lot of guys who bet max bets who I don't consider that sharp, like $200,000 on an NFL game, like whatever, like that. It's not always like, everything's relative and it's not always an indicator of like who's the sharpest. So we've actually found that, and maybe we're wrong in this, but I mean, I might be giving away market dynamics a little, but it seems like the bigger bets that we see, the max bets, those are more trying to like position the market in a certain way. And a lot of times our sharpest players are betting, 25, 40, 45% of the limit in a way where it feels like very coordinated. Feels like that there's, a motivation to take advantage of perceived kind of reputations in the market based on dollar amount, and that most books just jump to a conclusion of, because this guy's betting the max and because I know who this guy is, this is the side. And I don't think it's that clear cut. I think as you get later in the week, I think kind of like CLV becomes like wishy-washy whether it means that much. I think it means something, obviously. I'm not disrespecting CLV, and obviously it's a driver of, whether you're a long-term winner. But I just think like starting on Thursday, the dynamics of the market change a lot more. And the guys who are kind of like the big cats from Monday to Wednesday, they kind of dip out and they've gotten their value. And then you kind of start to see like, and I'm sure Rob could probably speak to that as well. Like as it gets later in the week, you see other players emerge and bigger guys emerge who you think you're, and again, I don't know your bet sizing and stuff, Rob, but who you think you're better at, but may bet bigger than you and control the market more than you, and that's how it feels to me. So.
Interesting. Yeah. So we've had this question come up before, and I answered it the opposite of you. And that was just because I have worked with a pretty large group, and I would just be one of several originators within that group themselves. So they're basically doing the same act that a bookmaker would do, but they would use their own internal originators to kind of determine what they would want to go out on. So my feeling was always like, well, this group has several originators already, and they're balancing those opinions to bet their opinion. I guess, with a lot of the hypotheticals, there really are a lot of nuances and actual specifics that you need to get down on. I'm certain there's people that bet more than me that I consider myself to be sharper than them, and there's probably people that bet less than me who are sharper than me, and that's just the reality of sports betting. But that was an interesting answer.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
So we'll move on now to, I know you've listened to a couple of the shows, but our plus EV, minus EV move of the week. Matt, we'll start with you. What do you got?
this part really stressed me out. Because I know you guys do this, and I'm like terrible at stuff like this. So I have two. I'm gonna go with the one that I recommend to people more often slightly. If you're not getting like a good deep tissue massage as a professional sports bettor or a bookmaker, or like a just really good strong massage, at least like at the most once every 2 weeks. Like I do one once a week. If you're not getting that, you're just like, you're costing yourself years in your life. Like you have to get a massage. And if you're not somebody who likes to, so when I started getting massage, I was somebody who like, I don't want to be touched. I don't want some stranger touching me. And then I found this like 75-year-old Asian woman who's like the strongest person I've ever met in my life. And she is like, I don't know, she's incredible. She like walks on me. She like, oh yeah. I think I've shed a tear during the massage. I've like cried. Like it's not out of like emotion, out of pure pain. And it's like I feel as good as I've ever felt in my life. I've been going to her for like 6 years, and it's just like it pays dividends. I'm so thankful I found her. Like it's incredible. So I recommend a massage to anybody, even if they're like, I don't like being touched. I don't like that. I don't think I'll like it. Like just try it once. Look for a recommendation because you need to get a good one. Like, and I think the harder the better, I think, but some people don't like a hard massage. But anyway, yeah, that's my plus EV.
I echo that. I don't do massage therapy particularly, but I do physio every week on like some ailments and stuff like that. I get some dry needling done and relieve some pain points. Honestly, it feels amazing. Like
I gotta book one ASAP.
Sometimes I skip a week and you feel it. I mean, listen, I'm my late 30s. I shouldn't feel like this, but the reality is I do, and it's really good advice. And like, look at my posture. Look at me sitting in this chair over the course of this interview. It's a disaster. It's a disaster.
I got to get one ASAP. It's been said.
Yes.
I'm going to get one probably this week.
If you come to Vegas, I will give you my lady. I will like, you know what? I'll buy you your first massage.
Wow. Thank you so much,
That's a great move.
I appreciate that.
You gotta drive to Green Valley though. It's in Green Valley.
That's fine. When I'm in Vegas next, I'll text you and we'll hook it up. This is the Asian lady you're saying that stands on the. Oh, okay. Yeah. I'll definitely try that out for sure.
She won't stand on you the first time. She's not gonna stand on you the first time. She isn't.
The last massage I went to, this is several months ago, but I was there, and I'm filling out the form. I'm drawing out where the pain is. I'm just like circling my entire back, like all here, whatever. She's working the back. There's some hot stones going on too, and then there's just like stops for like a minute, and you're face down. I'm like, I don't know what's going on here. Then all of a sudden, I just hear like this rattling kind of sound. And I'm like, what the fuck is going on? A minute later, feet directly in my back. This girl was walking on me, and then when I was done the massage afterwards, I realized that there's like a rack on the roof, on the ceiling, where they like hook themselves up to hold on to. But it was very unusual that she wouldn't have told me going in that like, hey, by the way, mid-massage, I'm gonna get up and stand on your back. It was amazing. It was the best massage ever. I could never think that would work, but it really, really worked.
All right, that's a very good one. Rob, you got your plus EV?
Yes. So I'm going to combine all mine into one, and this is like a lesson that I try to teach a lot of people. So bettors have to react to new information as it becomes available. That's something that's important, right? You might have a strong opinion on a game early in the week, but then stuff changes and you change your opinion. I'm going to do that now because previously on the Circles Off episode, I talked about Black Friday shopping, Boxing Day if you're in Canada, which is December 26th, and all these people who are like waiting in line at stores to get deals when you could just shop online and you could easily get all the stuff you need from the comfort of your own home. Well, this past Black Friday was a fucking disaster online, okay? Sites are down. I'm waiting in Best Buy in like a queue to shop the site. Took like 40 minutes to be able to shop the site.
Virtual line.
And I'm like, you know what? Fuck this. I have a Best Buy like 10 minutes from me. I'm going to the store. And I got there and there was nobody there. The trend has reversed. The trend is now reversed where nobody's going to the stores anymore. They're just shopping online. And because of that, I want to retract.
His plus EV is now a minus EV.
A previous plus EV, and say on these big sales days now, so many people actually don't want to get up and go shopping anymore. They want to shop online. You actually have to get out and go to the stores now. You should go to the stores. I went to the Brick, bought a couple couches, Best Buy, bought a new like coffee maker, TVs.
All the stuff for your new place.
Everything, got it done in like half an hour. I would have still been waiting in the queue online. So That's going to be my reacting to new information.
That's a good one
this week.
That is a good one. All right, I have mine. It's don't be late / know when to be late. Because it's okay to be late in certain scenarios. And what I mean by that is, number one is you don't want to be late. So if you're meeting with someone, whatever, like, just go a bit early. It's better to waste 5-10 minutes than be the guy who's like showing up like, oh, I came late. Never go late to a meeting, something important. You're online. If it's like a meeting with somebody and you're like, let's say me and Matt were like, hey, you want to do a Zoom call? We'll catch up next week. Sure. Just get there on the exact time. There's really no excuse, especially online stuff, right? But the second part is know when to be late. So for example, like I had a barber that I used to go to, and every time I'd go there consistently, I'd have to wait like 15 minutes for him to finish up the next guy's cut. He was always behind schedule, 10, 15 minutes. So then I realized like,
you're wasting your time.
I'm just going to go 20 minutes late to my own.
Yeah.
And then I'd go there and then he would be finishing up that guy's and maybe he'd have to wait for 2 minutes and it'd work out. So in those scenarios, know when to be late after a couple, but for the most part, just don't be late. It's actually disrespectful of people's time when you yourself don't come on time, and especially if it's online. It's just pretty unacceptable to not be there on time.
I agree with you.
Johnny, can I ask you a follow-up question?
Absolutely.
Okay, so this is kind of showing my what do you call it? Social anxiety disorder a little, but so with the Zoom meetings, if I'm signing on to like a meeting with like a bunch of people I don't know, and I'm not like super excited about like making small talk before the meeting starts, I've started pressing till like on the world clock where it's like 11 minutes, or it's like 11 minutes and it's like 57 seconds, and then I'm still on the minute, but I'm giving myself a greater likelihood of not being there before the meeting organizer has like started the flow. Do you think that's acceptable?
So this would fall into the know when to be late. I think you nailed it.
Yeah, it's a
know when to be late. You know, you're in that scenario.
You said not for online stuff. So like,
no.
11:01, is that crazy?
No,
is that like,
I'm saying don't be late unless it's one of those scenarios where you're like, okay, this is a scenario where I actually should be late. In which case you're late on purpose. And if you're late on purpose, that's fine. But most people like they're like, oh yeah, I have a phone. If I tell Rob, hey, Rob, you free for a call today? And he's like, yeah, I'm free around 5. Then yeah, I can text him at 5:05 and be like, hey, you good for a call right now? We said around 5. We're 5 good. Okay, sure. I'll call you around 5. That's okay. But if it's like an in the calendar meeting, I've seen people, they're just like, oh yeah, I have a meeting at 5. They're like grabbing their computer at like 5:03. Like it just.
I think those are the super social anxiety people because they're fearing the situation I'm saying. I think that I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt.
Fair enough. Another one is like if you technically, like whoever is like a higher status than the other guy, like it should be coming a bit later. But I also don't believe in that. What I mean by that is like if I'm asking you, hey, I really want like a minute here. Like, can I want to ask you some questions. Like, can you help me out with this?
You better be there on time.
You better be on time.
Yeah.
If you're like, hey, can you give me a job? Like, I'm looking for a job. Can you give me an interview? Like, obviously those scenarios, zero latency. Like, you have to be there early.
Yes.
But it is what it is. So yeah, don't be late or know when to be late because there's definitely
a little bit of mixed messaging, but I understand what you're saying. I get it.
Don't be late by accident. How about that?
Okay.
There's my plus TV.
That's the best way to frame it.
Sometimes it's unavoidable. You ever joined a Zoom call and then your Zoom decides to do an update while you're joining the call? You're like, fuck, this thing's gonna take 4 minutes to update. I'm gonna look like a complete asshole when I join.
That has happened, but no, too many people are like, oh yeah, sorry, I was like having internet connections. Like you weren't because you're on the internet all day. There's no way. Anyway, sorry, Matt, you got a negative EV?
This one was so hard again. Here's my
you put a lot of pressure on yourself, Matt. Don't worry, it's going to be okay.
So here's my negative EV stance before I'll preface it. Something that I think is negative EV is so subjective that like, I could say like, I don't know, taking an Uber to the airport, it's a million different things. And somebody could find some value in that. And so I don't want to like speak so I found one that I'm like, I just don't see any EV in it. Like negative EV all the time to me is like just committing crimes. I think like serious crimes, like the downside of going to jail is so bad. Like drinking and driving, like again, I'm not getting preachy here, but like like your downside is like your upside is you get home, which you would have any other way you chose to get there. Your downside is like you go to jail for 30 years.
Yeah.
Like, in what world am I risking? Like people always think like, oh, you've been a professional bettor, you must love risk. And I'm like, I fucking hate risk.
You just
like,
understand risk. You don't love risk. You just understand it.
I'm not looking for like catastrophic outcomes at all. Like I'm trying to eliminate catastrophic outcomes. So my negative EV is like committing serious crimes that could result in jail time.
All right.
No, I agree with that. I'll
100%.
take it a step further. I'm like the biggest proponent against drinking and driving. I've never done it in my life. I never will. I've seen so many people do it, and like, it's the ultimate negative free roll. Like it's so, back in the day, I understand how it was like you could kind of justify it. It's like, I can't even really get a ride home. Like, what am I going to do? But like in today's day, you don't even need to plan ahead. You could literally just get an Uber at any instant, like not even that expensive. Go home and then get an Uber the next day back to get your car if that's what you have to do. It's so unacceptable right now to drink and drive. And like Matt said, the risk is if you do harm someone while you're drinking and driving, like forget about this. How about this? If you're drinking and driving, you get into an accident with someone, 100% not your fault. Other guy hit you, something like that, completely not your fault, but you have alcohol in your system, you're fucked. You're toast. Why would you want to risk that? It's ultimate negative free roll.
You've ruined people's lives. Not to get too preachy here. You've ruined people's lives. You ruined your own life. It's just like, I don't even, crazy.
No, I like it.
I'm all in on that.
I'm all in on not committing crimes.
I'm
all in on not committing crimes.
I'm in on not going to jail. Good one, Matt. That would be going to jail negative EV.
That would be a very bad EV.
I think pretty bad.
You only have
EV.
so many years to live.
Exactly.
Why would you want to be behind bars?
Matt's like this before he gave. He's like, I don't know if some people will disagree with this one, but
no. This was the one he said that nobody could disagree with.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Imagine. I bet you there's someone out there that would disagree. They're like, you know what?
Like somebody who's like struggling. They're like, jail's great. Like you go to jail and you get a free meal.
That's what I was gonna say. In the winter, it's cold. You know, I don't know.
Technically, though, there would be scenarios where someone's like, okay, I'm literally like toast. I'm down in the dumps. Like if I rob this thing and I get it, then I'm like rich. And if I lose, I'm going to jail. But like my life's so shit anyways. Like, I mean, maybe you could. There might be.
There's some scenarios.
There might be a scenario where like you could understand it. But yeah, I definitely agree with that one. Rob, anything negative EV?
No, I've combined them all into one. I feel as much pressure now. Ever since you guys mocked me for putting frozen grapes into my drink, I've been really turned off by this segment.
Oh wait, Rob, I did that.
Okay.
I did it. And then my girlfriend, she was like, I don't know about these grapes. So she went and bought she bought like rocks to put in her wine.
Yeah.
Like stones.
Yeah. Stones, the whiskey stones.
I was all about the grapes. I thought that was cool.
Hey, thank you. I really appreciate that. I got so much flack for that idea.
My mom.
I tried it. I shouldn't say all about it. I tried it.
Okay.
My mom's a listener to this podcast. I went over once and she's like, look, I made these frozen grapes for us to put in the drinks. So my negative EV would be just using like any stock toothpaste that's around, because I think like brushing your teeth is like super important, and it could be enjoyable if you have a toothpaste you like. So you gotta get that. You gotta try out a bunch of toothpaste and be like, this is the one. This is my toothpaste. I love this toothpaste. I love this brand. Love this flavor. This is it. Buy a bunch of those and stock them. And then when you go to brush your teeth, it's like a little bit of joy that happens there. Is now you're like, I like this toothpaste. This is an enjoyable experience. And there you go. And if your toothpaste is bad, you don't want to brush your teeth. You're not gonna brush your teeth. Little wins. That's what this segment's all about. Compounding little wins.
What's the worst toothpaste you've used?
I've had a bubblegum flavored. I can't stand anything bubblegum flavored toothpaste. It makes me want to actually yak while I'm brushing my teeth.
I used to work for a company that owned Crest, and a guy that we now know was like the manager for Crest. And so I did get a lot of free samples, and some of them that were like non-production, and boy, was there some ultra terrible ones in that. So I can't even compare, because there's stuff that didn't even make it to the shelves. That's how bad it was. Like we're talking
You're like the guinea pig for like experimental.
buddy, we're talking like cucumber mint We're talking like the worst flavor. They just bunch of flavors. You know what I mean? Like,
did they watch your reaction as you used them to like?
No.
Gauge,
I wasn't in the test or anything. Like he would just have extras, and we were like kind of like not necessarily like broke, but like we're like just first job out of school. We're like, I'll take anything free. Like you're gonna obviously you make friends with all the guys. Like okay, this guy like works in like shampoo, so he obviously has samples for that. Like I'll just get all my shampoo for free from him, and then you make like connects and stuff.
That should be your plus EV move.
Is what?
Making connections
within the company.
Free samples, yeah.
No, yeah, you get free samples. Like, well, I wasn't gonna be going. Like, I just moved out. I'm like trying to save money. Like, if you give me a shampoo, like I'm not throwing that out because I don't like that other shampoo.
When Johnny visits Circa, he brings his own bottle and he pumps the shampoo from the shower into the bottle. Takes it home with him. No, now I don't. You also gotta think about it this way. Like if you find the thing you like that one toothpaste or that one shampoo or whatever, it brings you a little bit of joy. You only use that thing once a day, but when you go look at it, you'll be like, oh, that's a cool toothpaste. And you almost forget about it. And then the next morning you wake up, you're like, oh, it's a cool toothpaste.
You only brush your teeth once a day?
Twice, morning and night.
Once a day. I was just following up. Sorry.
No, you forget about it in the morning. I actually brush my teeth like there's no random schedule. I brush them when I wake up, when I go to bed, and then probably like at least another one time during the day if I'm home.
Okay. Not to turn this into like a oral hygiene segment or whatever, but I recently started using a water pick as well.
Oh, you did, eh?
They're fantastic.
I bought it and I didn't set it up yet.
Yeah, there's so many times I eat over the course, and because I work from home most of the time, I'm eating my meals at home, so it's really easy. I just go up to the washroom, and I hate flossing. I like the act of flossing, and I have like
I have the same. I can't
permanent
floss.
retainer on the bottom as well, so like I can't really floss nicely. The water pick, listen, I'm not in the business of like advocating for products that don't pay me. We talked about this before, but water picks are pretty solid.
I did also see that. I got that at Costco.
Max Fresh.
Colgate Max Fresh is your one?
Oh man.
That's your brand?
Is a banger.
Yeah. No, interesting. I'm not even gonna say it and pump another brand, but we're in on the get a good thing that you like.
Get a good thing that you like.
Also pillows too, same thing. If you have a good, there's no reason to use a shit pillow. Go out, shop, try a bunch of pillows, get a good pillow.
Relax the Back. I got a good one from Relax the Back. It's like they like fit you like the way you're like trying on a shoe. They like fit you for a pillow. It's pretty good.
I think we have to add a weekly lifestyle podcast.
Weekly lifestyle. Most of the pillows, just like a mattress, they will, if you get it from those like high-end pillow shops, they obviously come with a guarantee. Mm-hmm. So it's like there's no, also again, risk-free to try this out. You don't like that pillow, send it back, get a new one. Eventually you find one you like, keep it. There you go.
I recently got new pillows again, so moving. I bought new pillows.
I'm
with you on all these things. We've never agreed more than today's episode.
We've never agreed. Yeah. All right, Matt. It was a long episode. We end all our episodes with the same question. Looking back 5 years, just a measly 5 years, if you could talk to the previous version of yourself, what's one piece of advice that you would give to him?
5 years is tough. I might go a little further back and just say like, I don't know, maybe press some of my edges a little better. I think that like I was a little risk averse when I started betting, and I had edges, and all edges kind of dry up or to some degree. So I probably could have been more aggressive in some of my betting stuff. But I will say I've learned the lesson from a bookmaking standpoint, and I kind of mentioned before a little earlier, but you have these kind of situations as a bookmaker. I don't know, they just stick out. You feel like you have a good position, and the way the public is betting, like, and again, I know there was some disagreement on this fight, but I put the Tyson Paul fight kind of in there. I think that it struck me as one of those instances where, and again, I'm going to not.
What did you have? What did you have? Sorry, like for the clarification.
Well, I would have booked that fight pretty hard towards Paul. I think that, and again, it's a mini handicap, but like these events are kind of like, and I know people are going to get on me for comparing that to Mayweather McGregor because I know it's not the same thing, but you especially in boxing and those events, you get opportunities where the price is out of line to begin with because like the favorite should be much bigger, and there's a natural weighing down of the line because the public's on the dog. And as a sports book, you need to kind of feel emboldened to kind of like, and you want to be consistent with how you do it from a big event to big event, but you need to be emboldened to kind of like put yourself in a position to kind of have a big windfall. Another one that sticks out to me is I don't know if that was a couple years ago or when Michigan played Alabama, and from seeing the action, there was a pretty good sentiment from the bettors that I saw that Michigan was the right side in that game, or I say right side. But the Michigan was attracting a lot of sharp money, and my numbers supported it. And usually it's opportunities where I have a strong kind of handicap on something, and the market supports me and says, we think that you are correct in your assessment. And then there's a tendency for like the one side to attract a lot of public money in a way where you can accumulate a really good position and not have to like step out of line to do it. Those are not positions where the sportsbook should, in my mind, be selling off. You should be kind of just like holding your edge and be okay with kind of as big as the decision gets. And again, like, I don't know if Paul Tyson is fair to be lumped in there. I thought it should be, but like, I don't want to like, Monday morning quarterback it. But you get 4, 5, 6 of those events per year as a bookmaker. You need to have enough confidence in your experience to kind of isolate those events. And, when I said I have some gamble in me, like that's kind of what I mean. I'm okay having big decisions on events that I view as like, very, very, just very like plus EV for my book. So going back in time, I think if I understood all of that, and if I was a little more, I don't know if I had more, it's easy to say, if I had more experience when I was younger, obviously you do 100 things differently, but I would have pressed my edge a little more in certain situations. And yeah, so that's my answer.
I'm with you on that Jake Paul fight over Tyson there. The thing was, with a lot of these events like that, it's just like, it's a new promotion, it's a new company. You don't really know how that's going to play out, as we saw with, where's my, it's not here right now. No. The Logan Paul one. We took it off. And there was the Logan Paul versus Dylan Dennis fight. Just an absolute travesty of what happened to us in that fight. So there you go. Like, you never know. I don't know if you watched that one, but basically,
I did watch that one.
It was just such a bad production that like legitimately the clock was just wrong, and the fight lasted like an additional 30 seconds, and then like people stormed the ring, and then they just called it like a disqualification. And I did lose a good amount of money on the fight to go to decision, and Logan Paul to win by decision. And it's like who's going to overturn that? Like, who even cares? Like, they just don't. It doesn't matter. So you never know with these events. Like, it could just be a spectacle.
I didn't get to the part that I was going to reference of your guys' Matthew Trent Haley episode that I thought was like, it was a great point, and I never thought about it the way he said it, which was when you're betting these like high variance events where like, it's a big event, there's a lot of recreational money in the market, and you know that no matter what happens, that the price is going to be drastically different after you witness the event. So like, after Tyson Paul fights, that either, Tyson's going to be favored or Paul's going to be a huge favorite, most likely.
Yeah.
And so with those high variance outcomes, he just said it so perfect in a way that it like crystallized it in my head. And I'd always kind of like bet events like that because I felt like they were good bets, because you watch them, you're like, yeah, no matter what, I'm probably going to have 1,000 cents of value on one of these sides. And him bringing up that point was just like awesome to hear and think about in that way. And yeah, so that was great value that I got from listening to that pod, just in terms of like my future bets, and feeling emboldened to like step in and play those events more than I probably maybe had in the past. So
we'll link that Matt Trenthill episode in the description below for anyone who wants to check that out. It's one of the older ones. Matt, appreciate you joining us today. All the best with everything at Mojo. And whenever you decide to get back into bookmaking, I'm sure it'll be a successful operation. It was great to be able to pick your brain today. For anyone out there who enjoyed the interview, make sure you smash that like button down below. Make sure you're subbed here on Circles Off for more great interviews going forward. We'll be back next week with a brand new episode. Peace out, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.